just when you thought it was safe to put on your headphones? You entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Woo! 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 Baby, they say, does it get any bigger? Does it get any better? Does it get any hotter than when you're listening to Sovryn Tech with the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, and all the Sovryn naughty are ready to go, baby, because, oh man, I warned you about this episode. I said, damn it, we're going to have to talk about some blockchains, and we're going to get into it in just a few minutes. We got a little foreplay to get into, and you know that the Golden Stallion loves him some foreplay, baby. Oh, do I? All right, gotta calm down. But that's right, the baddest boy on the blockchain, boy, you haven't heard that one in a long while, is going to have to come back and set the record straight and tell everybody what's going on when it comes to Bitcoin Cash, when it comes to Ethereum and the Parity wallet and so much more. I know the Parity wallet's is kind of old news now, but Bitcoin Cash, we've had some time. We've had some time for things to settle a little bit, things to, maybe some realities to come to fruition or just to figure it all out. And it's here, and we're ready to do it. Now, I did talk about, because boy, you got to believe. So I did the live Patreon only, patrons only hangout, Google Hangouts Q&A for August. Already did it this week. So that way it's done for the month. But I already did it. It was a great time. A lot of people interacting. Even had a nice special appearance by Tatiana Moroz. She was in there for a while. For the whole episode. It was awesome. And I mean, instantaneously, all the questions were about Bitcoin Cash. So I talked about it a little bit there, broke down into some of it, but we'll take a deeper dive, certainly. And I have certain things to say maybe that I didn't get out in that Patreon episode. But boy, if you missed it, you can catch it if you become a Sovryn Tech patron. All you got to do is go to solutions.zog.ninja and you'll get your hookup. It's just $1 a month. Some people do significantly more, and I'm honored when they do. Some people increase after a while because they just go, holy shit, how do you do all this content? That's the other thing I get all the time. It's like, Brian, how the fuck do you put out so much stuff? Well, let me tell you, it's real easy when you know what the fuck you're talking about. It's real easy when you got the knowledge, when you got the credibility, the respectability, the whole package. When you've got that, then you can just turn on the microphone, start talking, and everything that comes your way, you can talk about. But never forget, if you don't know, just fucking say you don't know. That's okay. That's valid. Too many people won't use that phrase. Anyway, let's get into some of this foreplay, baby, because there is a lot. Like I said, there's a lot to cover. And oh, man. Well, all right, I'll save it for when we get to the story of the week segment, because that's when we'll break into Bitcoin Cash. So that's coming up. Now, why don't we talk? I want to talk a little hardware. I don't get to do this too often. We're actually going to talk a little more hardware during GameTalk, during the GameTalk segment of this episode. But let's talk a little hardware for a second. Then I actually have a listener email that I'm going to get to for the foreplay. And then we're going to start breaking into all of the blockchain stuff going on, because there's another blockchain story, not Parity, not Bitcoin Cash, that got sent my way for very obvious reasons that we'll talk about. But let's talk a little hardware. Let me tell you something. So talking phones, like phones are, there was a while, Sovryn Tech's been going for almost 5-6 years now. Okay. And it used to be pretty easy to talk phones because it used to be exciting, to talk about new phones coming out and everything. Really, phones, they're all black slabs now, right? Or they're all just slabs. They're all blocks of sensors, as I like to say. They're all more or less the same. And, there's something missing in that, in my opinion, the fact that they are all the same. Now, it's not true. That's really only true in America because Americans are boring. In other parts of the world, there's still some exciting stuff going on. And for whatever reason, it never gets sold off in America. And, I really think there's something to deconstruct there over why kind of unique products really don't, never make from tech giants, because the one I'm about to talk about is from Samsung, the biggest phone company in the world, really. Why these things never get schlepped off to the Americas, there's really, I think that needs to be deconstructed and explored. Because, so many things, never seem to, I can think of so many different phones, so many high-end phones, phones now, it's starting to happen where there's phones available in the U.S. What is it? The Asus Zenfone AR, that finally came, or that's out on, you can buy it on Amazon. I think it was a Verizon exclusive, but now you can get an unlocked one on Amazon. But that has, 6 or 8 gig of RAM in it? But there's been phones sold around the world with 6 gig of RAM for 2-3 years. What takes it so long for a lot of this stuff to get to America? What's the deal? I think there's something to say about a lot of that. But anyway, I'll tell you. So something that I actually miss, now that every phone does look the same, and the American market is so goddamn boring, you get a little jealous, I think, when you hear about a phone, and sometimes, a lot of phone sites, in fact, where I first heard about this was on Android Police, one of the most popular Android websites, if not the most popular Android website, on the internet. They love to talk about these things because it actually allows them to report on something a little bit different. But it's so funny because at the end of these stories, every single time you get some kind of different phone or a phone with really interesting specs, they always have to end it off with, but this will never see the light of day in North America. And you can read the last paragraph and it's always with such regret. And it's well, what the fuck? Why doesn't it happen? Anyway, I don't want to concentrate on that any further, but I do want this phone because something I miss, like I said, ever since, every phone looks the same now pretty much. Something I miss from back when cell phones first started. In fact, I remember my first cell phone, which I actually got from Sprint. I don't remember the exact model of the cell phone. It was a Motorola, but it was a clamshell design where you could close it. Now, there was something cool about that. And certainly, the movies took advantage and TV took advantage of the cool factor of when you want to hang up on somebody, say you want to hang up angrily or something, you make that really satisfactory closing of the clamshell. I love that. It's so badass. It's just click, it's over. You're not looking for the button. You're not pressing any kind of button. You close that clamshell, phone call's done. And it can look really badass. And I kind of miss that, admittedly. I think that's really cool. Now, there's a Samsung phone called the Leader 8 that is going back to this design where it's a flip phone design. Now, they're not the first ones to do this. In fact, I think I remember a couple years ago reporting that LG had come out with a phone as well. There was a clamshell, but there was also an Android phone, had a touch screen on it, but it also had the dial pad and, physical dial pad and everything. And that it would... it would more or less function, it had more modern specs in it, and it would function just like a smartphone, just it had that clamshell design. I love that clamshell design for a million reasons. There's the badassery of hanging up with somebody or, hanging up on somebody with it, and, just kind of that satisfaction and almost that certainty of what is pretty much a hardware switch that happens when you close it down. And also, there's the kind of the toughness, that comes with that, where it's kind of protected, your screen is sort of protected when you have that closed up, right? In fact, recently I acquired a Nintendo 2DS XL, which is the brand new. We'll talk about this later during GameTalk, which is the brand new model of the 3DS, okay, which is a very popular console. And it went back to because the original 2DS, which is a 2D version of the 3DS, it doesn't have the built-in 3D screens. The original version of that, was just this flat open thing. And everybody's like, well, this is terrible. This is a horrendous design because you kind of lose that solid feel and you lose that sort of protection where you can toss it in your pocket and you're not worried about the screens or anything. So I think Nintendo knew that and they're like, okay, well, we'll go back to, we'll go back to the clamshell design. And that's exactly what they did with the 2DS XL. So I think it's cool that Samsung's giving this a shot. And again, the Leader 8 is totally modern specs. has a Snapdragon 821 processor, 64 gig of internal storage, and it also has a micro SD card slot, 4 gig of RAM, 2300 milliampere battery, which is pretty much the same thing I think that's in my Moto E4, and that lasts literally over, well over a day. It has wireless charging, uses Samsung Pay. I mean, it's got it. It has so if it has Samsung Pay, does that mean it has NFC? I think so. Anyway, it's got it all. The thing is, the only part that's kind of ugly is it has 2 screens. It has one on the outside, and then it has one on the inside when you flip it open, but then when you close it, there's a screen out there. So you sort of lose that protection aspect of it, but I don't know. I think the thing looks awesome. Like, it is such a cool looking little phone, and I love little phones as well. I'm really, really over the giant fucking phones, and they're just going to get bigger this year. Already, all the reports are coming out for a lot of the new phones that'll get released, and there's plenty of them being like the Note 8. The Samsung Note 8 is going to be 6.3 inches, I think. I mean, they're just getting massive. There was a time where I liked that, but I've learned over time, no, you don't want your phone to take over your life. It's not. It will never replace your computer. It will never replace your desktop or laptop. So it might as well be as small as it can be. And of course, personally, I've wanted really the smartwatch to finally take over. But again, not where the smartwatch is an accessory, but where the smartwatch is the entire fucking phone. It's the phone itself. It's not something connected or tethered via Bluetooth or something like that. And I know there's been attempts as late. I've been covering them for years. I'm well aware of all of them from LG and, Android, Android Wear 2.0 and all that. I know all about it. I know which ones come with the SIM card slots. I got it. Okay. But it's not really here yet where you really can you can kind of do it with one of Google's new ones, which those are from LG, but where you really can just call up your telco and say, okay, yeah, activate this phone number, and they're really just activating your watch. We're not exactly up to that point yet. Not really. We're close, but anyway, I want that badly. But if I couldn't have that, this is exactly what I'd want. Give me all those modern features. Go ahead and give me the touchscreen. Allow it to do everything that every other Android phone can do, but give me that clamshell design and give me some hardware buttons, and I am on board. I know BlackBerry releases their stuff with hardware buttons too, but this is the look. I like the clamshell design. I thought it was pretty cool. So for once, we get to talk about some new hardware. Unfortunately, again, like I said, just because whatever, the U.S. market is just terribly, terribly boring. We're not going to get it here, And you could say maybe it's because Samsung is doing it as a test market to see if it's a good idea before they kind of send it elsewhere. I always feel like that's, I don't know. I never really buy that argument because you don't really know until you unleash it in America. I mean, you're talking about not totally different mindsets, but they're to a degree. There's some, because this is designed for China, but to a degree, I mean, there's some different mindsets in what people may want. There's a certain ruggedness, I think, that comes with living in certain parts of America where this could be a very attractive phone, among other reasons. So, yeah, I don't buy that about test markets. I understand test markets are a thing. I'm just saying I don't buy that's why that's not getting released in America. I think there's something else going on there. Anyway, let's move on to another story. In fact, this is going to be a listener email that I want to address. And, while we're on the subject of phones, of course, what's one of the first things you do with a phone? You install Signal on it, right? Of course you do. That's exactly what you do. That's exactly what you were going to answer with. At least I hope that's what you're going to answer with. So let me read the email here. Coming from the author of the Dark Android blog, which I am the author of the Dark Android blog. I'm also the author of the Dark Android book, which you can find at darkandroid.info. Just type that in. It takes you right to Amazon, and you can get Dark Android 2017 edition, your no-nonsense guide to securing your device and reclaiming your privacy. Woo! But anyway, so coming from the author of the Dark Android blog, your support of Signal troubles me. On one hand, you push for staying away from Google. Then you endorse communications platforms that require Google services without ever bringing up this concern. I equate the Play Store with a toolkit. Nothing is safe. Okay. No, I do bring this up all the time. In fact, at every talk that I give, at PorcFest, I brought this up, and you can hear that if you're a Sovryn Tech patron. The audio is available for that. That I always tell people, because All right, so there's some arguments that get made against Signal that are fucking moronic. This is not one of them. This is an absolutely legitimate argument being made. Some of the moronic ones is that people say that it's funded by the U.S. military and all this other shit. Anybody that just wants to run to that, like that's an argument that gets used against Tor as well, I think is intellectually lazy when they say that, because you're not really taking the time. Look at the code. Tell me if the code looks like there's some bullshit going on. Okay, then we'll talk about whether or not the Navy's putting in backdoors or the military's, doing some kind of bullshit or whatever. Give me the technicals. Don't just say that, well, here's this money. Like, give me some technicals on when it comes to that, if you have the ability. Look, when we're talking about closed source software and we're talking about like some major fucking companies like Alphabet/Google and whatever else, yes, fine, let's talk about where the money's flowing. But we're talking about little companies like this, like Open Whisper Systems and whatever else, which is run by a completely avowed and open anarchist. Then you got to give me something more than just saying, oh, well, there's some grant money coming from this area, which is attached to the military. I'm not saying that that's invalid. I'm just saying, okay, got it, but you got to give me more than that, because there's a lot of evidence pointing in the opposite direction of what you're saying. So you better give me something in the code that's a problem. And nobody can give you any problem with the code. Not really. I mean, you complain about the beta stuff, and I've complained about that, well, why would you use, like, there's a beta version of the Signal app. I do not recommend using the beta version of the Signal app. That would seem to be antithetical. You're doing, you're in a test feature for something that you're supposed to be betting your life on? What? No. So anyway, so I bring this up often. So I have 2 points, kind of to make on this, okay? I do bring up the point, and in fact, in the Dark Android blog, as I originally wrote it, I constantly said on the main Dark Android page, I said how the problem with Signal is you can't get it in F-Droid, because it has dependencies on the Google Play Store, and that is a concern. Open Whisper Systems is aware of this concern, and they have been continually working on getting it off of those Google Play dependencies for some time. Okay. Now, this is why when anybody asks me, okay, about Signal and like about this situation, or the even greater concern that it requires you effectively to be within the telco system. Like, you have to be a customer effectively of some, major corporation, more or less. Even Ting and a lot of these other things, they're MVNOs. They're still using the towers, the antennas, the lines, whatever, of these major companies like Verizon, AT&T, and others. Okay. But with Signal, you have to be, you have to have a phone number. You don't have a choice. You've got to have a phone number. Now, that's a huge problem. I understand why people don't like that. I understand why they don't like that. Oh, well, when I installed Signal and some of my other friends that have Signal, suddenly it comes up with a message that says, hey, let them know that they're on Signal, and it lets everybody know that you're using Signal. Yep, I totally get how those are all believe me, that's a huge problem. When people bring up to me what is my favorite way to encrypted message, I do not say Signal. I say PGP encrypted email. Okay, that's my answer, and that can be done on mobile, and that's fine. And I don't think this person is being mean. I'm just saying, understand that, no, I do talk about this all the time, all right? But I'm going to explain why I still say, hey, use Signal, okay? So PGP encrypted email is great because, if you really had to, you can run your own email server, no problem. Problem solved. Like, you don't need to rely on anybody, okay? You don't need a phone number, and the only people that need to know your PGP key or need to know that you even have that email address are the people that you tell, instead of, everybody getting alerted once you install Signal. Now, the reason that Signal works that way, okay, is for ease of use. It's an easy way to verify who you're talking to. Okay, it's simply, that's what it's about. It's just part of the verification process. There is really there's not a quicker, potentially easier way really to do that, like to solve that issue. This is something I covered probably 3-4 years ago on Sovryn Tech, because somebody raised this problem, that, well, yeah, but we have to use a phone number and blah, blah, blah. I get it. I totally understand that problem. I understand it being dependent upon Google Play services. Yep, you're absolutely right, which again, I recommend using, use K9 Mail, say on an Android phone, okay? You use K9 Mail and you use Open Keychain. Those two things you can get in F-Droid. You install those and that becomes, your messenger as far as that goes. All right. Yep. I'm, totally on board with you on all of that. No Google Play services required whatsoever. Rock and roll. There you go. And you can export that, your email address and your PGP key, to any other device you need to. Okay. Awesome. Great. There you go. Do that. Right now. Why do I still recommend Signal? Here's the thing, is that when the average person, I'm not saying this emailer is the average person at all, because obviously they're a Sovryn Tech listener and they respect my work and I appreciate that and I appreciate them. Okay. When the average person, or maybe still not so the average person, says to me and says, well, okay, like they raise these concerns, like the fact that you have to have a phone number, the fact that it goes through Google Play services or, the iOS App Store or something like that. When they raise these things to me, they tell me what they want it to do, and they say, but grandma's got to be able to use it. And that's when the argument just falls apart. Okay, most people will say that though, but all right, but that's like when you tell them to try PGP, and it's so funny because like Open Keychain and using it with K9 Mail is so fucking simple. Like without negative, without diminishing returns, it cannot get any simpler than that. Everything's just a matter of a couple button presses. It's fucking crazy how well that works. But the average person says that's too hard. That's too hard. And I'm not just talking about grandma. I'm talking about younger people too. Whatever. I mean, any demographic, and they're just like, that's too hard. I'll install Signal. So what I've learned over the years is that, look, here's a concept that people have to accept. There is a trade-off. It is an endless trade-off. I talked about this at PorcFest just in June. There is an endless trade-off. It will always be there. It might as well be like the 10th law of thermodynamics. There's a trade-off between convenience, as in ease of use, and security. Most people are not interested in trading off, or most people are just fine with trading off security for convenience. They just are. Okay. And I've learned that over the years that they just don't care. It needs to be like one button press pretty much. I mean, for some people, Signal's too hard for them to install, which I can't believe it, but okay. But there's always going to be that trade-off, and people just don't want, they're constantly searching for, but how do we make it easy for grandma? You can't. Don't you get it? Like it's not possible for it to be easy. Like the fact that Signal uses, your phone number as a verification system is part of the reason that Signal is as easy as it is. You can't change that without there being a problem. You cannot change it. Okay. Now I know there's people who are recommending, but we got to find a way to kind of more diversify, what you're doing with Signal, and that way people can't identify you so quickly with your phone number. Now what you can do, and some people have been recommending this lately, is set up an alias system within Signal. Yeah. I hope that happens very soon. I really, really do. Okay. I'm not giving up on this stuff. I'm just saying I have come to accept that the average person just doesn't give a shit anymore. Signal is about as far as they are willing to go. I'm not insulting them either. I'm just saying I don't know what part of this isn't getting through people's heads. If it's convenient, it's probably there's aspects of it at least that are not secure. And security, understand, security is a multi-part process. Security is decentralization. Security is anonymity. It's privacy and security. Okay. And when your name is attached to a phone number, now, you could put in a second SIM card and that way it's not so attached to your name. And there's lots of little tricks you could do as far as that goes. But believe me, if people aren't willing to set up PGP email, they're sure as fuck not prepared to go setting up a separate SIM card that has some kind of like anonymous, anonymous identity attached. I get it. You're right. In a perfect world, no, Signal is unacceptable because you're relying upon Google Play services. But that's not going to happen. And so I recommend to people about the farthest that they're willing to go. In my book, I still talk about, I have a whole tutorial on how to set up PGP key, PGP encrypted email. I try. But, I mean, Signal, look, understand too, though, but like the axolotl protocol, the Signal protocol is rock solid crypto. I mean, we can argue about, and we could talk about how, well, shit, it's connected to Google Play services. Yeah, that's a genuine problem. Okay, but the encryption itself is great. There's no argument about the encryption. Just like when there was the Vault 7 leaks. Yeah, okay, fine. Android is broken, but like WikiLeaks is saying Signal is broken. Signal's not broken. Android might have been, but Signal, now, I mean, you could say, well, if Android's broken, then Signal is, yes, after a fashion, but the Signal protocol, the crypto itself, is not broken. Okay, so we need better implementations of this stuff. And look, all of this is open source. Anybody can go ahead and implement it. All right, new services can get created that end up using the Signal protocol or whatever. And by all means, do so. This is the thing, oh boy. This is a conversation I'm going to be having in the near future, talking about Zcash. A lot of people have concerns about Zcash for varying reasons, whatever. Look, I support the technology of zero-knowledge proofs. That's the most important thing to me. Understand that. Okay? Just like with Signal, the most important thing to me is that Signal protocol is fucking awesome. Fine. Let's come up with new implementations for it. Great. Let's do that. All right. But the protocol itself, beautiful. So, yeah, I get it. And if I'm getting heated up, it's just I get this, not necessarily because you're bringing up a valid, the emailer's bringing up an absolutely valid argument, okay, about Signal that's a problem because it is attached to Google Play services, and Google Play services is effectively one giant exploit. Okay, yep, I get that. And I mean, and there's there's companies that knew this that tried to solve it, like Blackphone. I brought this up in the recently. Blackphone, okay, the company Blackphone, their first phone that they released, the Blackphone 1, did not have Google Play services on it. Guess what? It didn't sell. Because people said, wait, I can't put Facebook Messenger on here. I don't want this fucking phone. And it wasn't just like the everyday customer either. It was businesses, like they were trying to get it out to businesses, not just regular consumers. Nobody would buy it. And so they come out with the Blackphone 2, and I harshly criticized the Blackphone 2 because I said, well, I get it. Yeah, guess what? They couldn't find any customers for it because you can't have Facebook Messenger on it or something. But once you put the Google Play Store on there, like, stop trying to sell it off as some kind of, like hyper secure phone. And I use the term hyper secure. Okay. So yeah, I understand. Look, the phrase, nothing is safe, everything is broken. I get that, and I wouldn't argue against it. I've always said the only thing you can I said two things. One, if you are targeted by the NSA, there's nothing you can do. Like you're screwed. You're screwed. If you are like targeted as in, okay, we are going after Brian Sovryn or something like that, you're screwed. The second point that I always make is that all you can really do, even if you're not a target, is just make things expensive for them. And I think Signal does make things difficult for them. And I think for varying parties too. In fact, I don't think it's crazy that, to consider using Signal when you find out that the Clinton campaign ended up using Signal. Just because, like, okay, no, we need to talk, because there was the email scandal and everything. So we need to talk in an encrypted fashion. And so, they used what was the most readily available out there. Is it perfect? The app and its implementation, no. Not necessary. It's not 100% perfect. Is the encryption perfect? If there's such a thing as perfect encryption, yep, it's as good as PGP. There you go. Look, again, I totally fucking get it, okay? But there's realities after doing a show for 5 years that you just come to realize. People are going to keep using Windows. People are going to, you just go down the list. People are still going to keep using iPhones. People are going to keep using whatever. Just pick the technology that there's problems with. People are going to keep on using it. So you start telling people, okay, hey, why do let's make it expensive for them. Use this implementation for this. Use this. When you do that. And that's the point that I've come to. I'm not giving up. It's nothing of the sort. I have clients that when they call me and they say, and I ask them, how far do you want to go down the rabbit hole? And if they want to go really far, we're starting to talk about, we're using Tails. We're using, we're setting up Replicant on like a Nexus 5 phone. Okay, you're going to connect to Wi-Fi with a dongle. I can go that deep with people. But most people just aren't interested. And I'm not begrudging them that. everybody, I mean, we only have so much time in our lives, and I get it. And, not everybody can spend all the time researching this stuff. And so you want to use what's simple and what seems to, connect you with the people that matter, blah, blah, blah. And great. And so Signal comes up as an excellent option as far as that goes. Is it going to stop the NSA? Is it going to stop some other people if they have cracks for the entire operating system like iOS or Android or something like that? Maybe not. But it is going to make things harder and more expensive. Okay, I get it. Yeah, no, believe me, I have never said that Signal is like, I may say the phrase like the gold standard, but if somebody asked me like what if I really wanted to talk with encrypted communications, okay, all the way, I would not be recommending Signal. I would instantly say PGP email. I mean, just and that answer hasn't changed in years. So I understand your point. I'm not mad at you. I know I'm getting heated up, but like I said, it's just because I get so many people that are just like, okay, yeah, but how do I get this anti-NSA technology that grandma can use? Grandma can't fucking use anti-NSA technology. It's not possible. You trade security when you have convenience. It's not possible. Like, that's just a law. It's a universal law. It's not like a government law. It's a universal law that you can't do anything about. Security's hard. You've got to know shit. Okay. It really is. Oh, anyway. So like I said, emailer, I appreciate that. I'm glad you brought it up. And I'm glad, look, I'm happy that you thought about that. That, hey, wait a second, this is relying upon Google and you're telling people to get away from Google. You're absolutely right. I do. And that in and of itself is a problem. But even when companies that have plenty of funding like Blackphone, when they start, yeah, I hate to say it's a concession, or that I'm backing down or something like that. It's just knowledge of what people are willing to do. And again, the more secure, and understand this point as well, the more secure everybody is, even if it's just using something like Signal, the better off everybody is. So me getting people to use Signal at least, if they want to talk about PGP email, fucking awesome. Okay. But, at least getting people using Signal really does help. Okay. I don't buy into the argument that, yes, everything is broken, but I don't buy into the argument that you need to be a nihilist about it. You just don't. You really can make it harder. You can make it more expensive. If anything, even using Signal is great just because it's such a clean fucking interface. Holy shit. You look at Facebook Messenger, some of this other stuff, it is so bogged down. It's so clogged. It's so complex. That amazes me too. People are like, oh, it's too hard to install Signal, but they use Facebook Messenger. Man, that is an ugly ass UX. It looks terrible. Or the Facebook app. The Facebook app is so goddamn complex compared to K9 email and Open Keychain. People, that's a problem too. And that's kind of where you can call bullshit on some people and say like, no, don't give me that it's too hard, because there's no way you can tell me that the Facebook app is easy to use. Bullshit. And they just keep adding on features. Well, they said they're going to get rid of the Groups app, right? Starting September 1st this year. That news just came out. And they're going to just bake it all into the Facebook app. And it's like, holy fuck, how much more are you going to put into that? It's bad. So even their arguments that it's too hard, I don't really buy it. I get it. You want it to be convenient. It's there. You already have an account. There's arguments to be said for account minimalism. I make those. But holy shit. Just be honest. Everybody just be honest. So, and I hope you felt, that my answer was honest and straightforward and explains why I talk about that. Please don't be troubled by the fact that I recommend Signal. Okay. Because it's not the top of the heap. It's just, you start talking about, better options. And what are you going to tell, like Wire, Telegram? Talk about bad crypto. Telegram's crypto. There's plenty of troubles to have around that. Other than PGP encrypted email, and even like the Briar app, which I'm very excited about, the Briar app, which uses Tor. As far as I can tell, I think that has Google Play dependencies as well. What? I'm open to hearing where else you want to go with this. The Conversations app that uses XMPP, and you can, you could use OTR with it. Yep. Okay. Awesome. That's a great option. Sure. I'll recommend that in a heartbeat. Okay. But again, I'm just saying I've come to realize there's things people are willing to go through and things that they're not. And regardless of what the reality is around that, I'll get people on step by step into these other things. I mean, most people that even use Signal don't know, like, to verify their secret codes, with the person that they're chatting with. They don't even bother. Again, not an insult. I understand. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge conversation. But the main thing that I want people to realize, walk away from is, look, it's the trade-off between security and convenience. You choose one or the other in varying degrees, and you can't do anything about it. Nobody is going to develop a fucking technology, okay, that even like the Briar app. So the Briar app, let's bring that up quick. The Briar app is like, I love a lot of what's going on with that. All right, now, to make sure there's a secure handshake between your public keys, okay, when you're using the Briar messaging app, you have to be in person. That's pretty fucking inconvenient, wouldn't you say? It is. I mean, and people are already complaining about it, and rightfully so. I understand why. All right, but let's be clear here that you just traded security of having that person right in front of your face and verifying that it's them, which, how does Signal handle that? It verifies via email, or I mean via your phone number, right? That's attached to your account. Okay. But you traded, but you're mad that you lost the convenience of being able to do it, over the internet or something, and not having to be face to face with somebody. But that's the security that Briar is kind of offering, right? So that's what I'm saying, is that there's always that trade-off, and we can argue about it till we're blue in the face, but it's there. Accept it. Accept the fact that grandma is not going to be able to use a genuinely secure system. She's just not going to. And I use grandma, the term in the abstract. I know people that are in their 60s and 70s that have a far better understanding of cryptography than perhaps I ever will. Okay. Not to say I'm a noob at this stuff, but anyway. So, okay. Wow. I spent a lot of time talking about that, but that's okay, because I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the next thing that's on my list. So here's another thing sent to me. Actually, somebody shared it in the Facebook group as well, in the Sovryn Tech Uncensored Facebook group. Hey, boy, you want to talk about something? Yeah, I don't want to use Facebook. I get enough demand where people are like, hey, we want a Facebook group. Turns out, and then it ends up being this very popular thing that everybody wants to be in on, and everybody's posting in and having a great time. Good, I'm glad. Okay, but I for years was saying, no, I don't want to be on Facebook. This is a problem. I don't want Sovryn Tech to be, to be bolstering Facebook in any way. Well, now there's a group. People love it. I'm enjoying it, to degrees as well. And like, people, I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not insulting you. I'm just saying, let's understand. Again, we're trading that security and convenience. Okay. So anyway, I got this to my email. Good way to do it. No argument here. Let's see, Brian, I do not have a Facebook account to test the app and check their claims. I would love to hear about your take on this in a Patreon or Sovryn Tech Prime episode. Well, you're getting it in the Sovryn Tech Prime episode. And real quick, I'll just read here. Ride-sharing startup Arcade City launches mobile app in 155 countries. Holy shit. Some bad ideas just won't die. Let me read a little bit more of the email. I know that you've been critical of Arcade City in the past, and while I love the concept, tend to agree when it comes to this product. The website has only a screenshot and a link to the app, which makes me wary since they do not give any details of how their quote-unquote self-governing peer-to-peer system, yet apparently closed source app works. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So the Arcade City, it was, if I think of it, I'll put the link in the show notes for this. It was Sovryn Tech episode 193. The title is You Get a Blockchain, You Get a Blockchain, You Get, and then ... I ripped this whole thing to shreds. Like, there is so much ugly history behind the development of this app. Not even the fact that the app, who the fuck knows if it's even real? And I'm not going to install it. And I don't have the Facebook app on my phone. And I'm not, I'm not interested. I'm really not interested in testing this. And I'm not even going to take the time to break out a fucking, a burner phone or something to be able to test it out. I don't care. I don't need to know. This is a terrible goddamned idea. This is a bad Arcade City. Now, okay. In the abstract, the idea isn't necessarily terrible, but Arcade City itself, there's so much ugly history out there. If you got this email, stay the fuck away from this. In fact, it's hilarious. Right at the bottom of the email, okay, that this person forwarded to me, it says, what Arcade City has achieved on a shoestring budget, outlasting multiple Uber clones in Austin and providing a genuine alternative to Uber, Lyft / Big Corp, meaning that that's an abstract, is nothing short of revolutionary. Shoestring budget? No. You don't get to make that claim. So yeah, so it was supposed to be based on Ethereum. I didn't give you an explanation of what Arcade City is. It's supposed to be a decentralized blockchain-based rideshare app to compete with something like Uber or Lyft, and it was very popular in Austin for a while. Thing is, the app wasn't really real. People were just asking. Like the app was just kind of this ethereal notion in people's heads, and they were really just using the Facebook group to hail rides. That's it. They weren't really using the app. And then listen to episode 193 of Sovryn Tech, and you'll hear all the bullshit. You'll hear from Roger Paxton of the Lava Flow podcast, where he just skewers the whole thing and gives you a complete history of the problem with this. The guy behind it, Christopher David, complete scam artist. Complete. And there's some, bringing up Arcade City will have some bearing on Bitcoin Cash here in a minute as well. But this is a terrible idea. I don't trust this company with a 10-foot pole. It already broke off. Like, it became Arcade City, like a lot of its, I guess I'll say, intellectual property and code and whatever turned into, was it Swarm City or something? And then there's like a council that got built around that, and that became a separate app of its own, which is running into its own problems, I'm guessing, with some other things going on. Anyway, and Christopher David was just like, okay, yeah, I'll leave the project. Just let me continue using the term Arcade City. And now apparently it's closed source. I mean, there's so much fucking wrong with this. This is so bad. Please listen. If you got this email and you're like, oh, I wonder if they've changed. No. Learn something about the creators and developers behind it, and you'll know like that this is a pattern. It's something that happens over and over again. And this is another one of those bullshit fucking, and even listen to some of the episodes after episode 193, where, I broke down, like, because there were other attempts where they tried to do another token sale around it and everything. It's all so bad. And some people have said that they did actually test this out. Some people that contacted me said they did try it out. They said the app crashed instantly once you installed it. This is just fucking bad. Stay away. Just fucking stay away from it. Okay. That's all I'm going to put out there as far as Arcade City goes. It's hilarious. And I don't, considering it's closed source, I wonder how much the actual app is even doing anything. And because it asks you pretty quickly, apparently, to log in with Facebook or Twitter. And I wonder how much of it is actually just using Facebook or Twitter as a back end to connect you with varying things, much like it did when it originally came out. No good, folks. No good. Be very, very always the default position with any blockchain technology that comes out, and this is a message to go across this entire episode of Sovryn Tech. The default position is that it's a scam. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the guy, that ran Firefox forever and now he has the Brave browser. The default position on any ICO, on any blockchain, technology, whatever idea that comes out, is it's a scam. And they have to prove otherwise. They are guilty until proven innocent, because there's just too much of this shit. And you can listen to episode 193 and it proves the fucking point. Okay? I'm not going to spend a whole other episode ripping on this. You can go, I'll link to it. I'll make sure I'll link to it in the show notes. It'll be right next to where it says Arcade City in the show notes. There will be a bit.ly link that'll take you right to the SoundCloud sound. Okay. For that episode, you can check it out. A lot of people love that episode. It's one of my most popular episodes I've ever done. Okay. So anyway, that's that. Woo. I got all hot and bothered during the Foreplay. I usually like it to be more, it's usually the calm part of the show, but instead it isn't. Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. I just mentioned Roger Paxton, who if you listen to episode 193 of Sovryn Tech, wait till you hear his breakdown of Arcade City. Fucking brilliant. Honest journalism work. Phenomenal. He has another podcast, and this one's a little more fun. And I know it's fun because I listen to it all the goddamn time. That is the Resist the Empire podcast. Can you imagine what that's about? It's not exactly what you think. It is libertarian. It is that liberty-minded stuff, okay? But it's about Star Wars, baby, and we love Star Wars on Sovryn Tech. Absolutely. And I'll tell you something. If you're not a Star Wars fan now, listen to that podcast a few times. There are a few episodes in. Listen to that. It'll make you a Star Wars fan. Just a phenomenal show. Great production value, the whole thing. This is a podcast for the ages. I love the Resist the Empire podcast. You can go to resisttheempirepodcast.com to listen to it for yourself. And, something else, follow them on social media because they have the best fucking memes, especially if you understand Star Wars. Like, I laugh my ass off every time. It's so cool. But they do a lot of fun things on the show. They do the Galaxy's Smallest Political Quiz where they analyze different characters every week. They do all kinds of cool things. Just one of the best shows out there. One of my favorite, and certainly it probably tops my list as far as Star Wars podcasts. ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com. Give it a listen, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech.
Story of the week.
I was supposed to save all of my energy for... No, don't worry. I have plenty of energy. I am an endless fount of energy when I'm powered by high-calf tea. But I was supposed to save it all for this segment. But, there's not exactly something to get angry about or to get all kind of hot and bothered about here. This is all going to more or less be matter of fact. But I said I would break it down. I said I would talk about it. I had so many people that wanted me to talk about it, so I will talk about it. And what we are talking about is Bitcoin Cash. Now, for those that don't know, and I'm going to explain it all to you, Bitcoin Cash is an altcoin. Yes, it's an altcoin. Bitcoin Cash is an altcoin that is very closely tied and very similar to Bitcoin. Okay. Other than a couple of major, a couple of major differences between the two and the argument why Bitcoin Cash exists. So what you have, what's being popularly called a hard fork, it is not a hard fork. It is an altcoin. Okay. But people want to call it a hard fork. And I mean, just to prove that, like, this notion of because using the term hard fork is meant to be very scary. It's a scare tactic used by people that, like people heavily invested in Bitcoin to try and keep people, leaving Bitcoin sort of where it is. So that way they can hold on to their value, that they have it and whatever. And look, it's not like Bitcoin has a problem. So when Bitcoin Cash was created, okay, this would be August 1st, just a few days ago. On August 1st, when it was finally created and the Bitcoin network finally did a block on its own, hashed out a block on its own blockchain. So now, without question, even though Bitcoin Cash is using the same transaction history blockchain effectively as Bitcoin, before August 1st, now they are absolutely, without question, two completely different currencies. Okay, Bitcoin Cash is the altcoin and Bitcoin is still Bitcoin. But since August 1st, Bitcoin has done nothing other than reach new record highs. In fact, today, that being Saturday, August 5th, it hit an all-time high of, I think, $3,212 US dollars. Bitcoin is doing just fine, obviously. And that's not some kind of dead cat bounce because it's not like it did some kind of crazy dip, beforehand. Not crazy dip anyway. I'm not saying the price didn't change or go down or anything, but it wasn't insane. Okay, so no, this is just proving the stalwartness, the sturdiness, the resiliency of Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin reaching an all-time high. As to where also today, yesterday, Friday, Bitcoin Cash reached an all-time low, or what could be called an all-time low, where I think it was under $200. Right now, it's at about like $244. Okay. Not very exciting prices. Bitcoin Cash, when it was first created, had a value, I think, a high of about $700. Okay. I mean, it's not, I think it'd be kind of unfair to say it's a fraction of Bitcoin's worth, but it's not Bitcoin, obviously, and nobody is treating it, and nobody really seems, or at least the market, I should say, not nobody, but the market does not seem to be treating it with the same kind of respect and valuation that Bitcoin has. Why it reached $700, we'll break into that. But let's talk a little bit about the history of why Bitcoin Cash is even a thing, what's going on, what is the difference between it and Bitcoin, all of that. Let's do it. So to understand this, you had, for the past couple of years, and really for more than that, there has been the concern, the constant raising of the flag, that Bitcoin is growing at a pace where too many, with so many people using it, and with the 1 megabyte, block speed effectively, which 1 megabyte, the block size is how much data can be sent over the Bitcoin blockchain at any given moment. With a 1 megabyte block size, you can only do about 3 transactions per second. As more users come on, that is not fast enough. And suddenly transactions can take minutes, hours, days, who knows how long. And mining fees, which for Bitcoin, which pay for, which give the value and the precedence to how quickly or in what order a Bitcoin transaction happens, start to go through the roof. I've complained about this in like the past couple months, where I was paying for my VPN service, private internet access, which is what I use. They are not a sponsor, but I pay for that. And I pay for it with Bitcoin. Now, it's like $6 a month. It got to the point in Bitcoin where to do that transaction, to pay for that, and I used Bitcoin because I wanted to be somewhat anonymous, okay? To do that, and I want to support Bitcoin as well, of course, it actually cost double the amount that private internet access was charging for the VPN, because it cost $6 to send $6 in Bitcoin, or something to that effect. It was crazy. And so actually the following month, when I needed to update my VPN service, I used Zcash to pay for private internet access. And there were no troubles. In fact, anything that we're describing right now does not affect, my other favorite altcoins like Litecoin, Zcash, and some of the others. Okay. So keep that in mind, because that for some might be in many ways an ultimate solution and an investment opportunity when it comes to Bitcoin Cash, but we'll probably talk about that more in a minute. So the Bitcoin, the transactions in Bitcoin were becoming untenable. They were becoming unmanageable. They were becoming impractical for people to use on any kind of regular basis. Solutions over the years have been recommended for how to solve this. A couple of them are increase the block size to where, because if only 1 megabyte can only do 3 transactions per second, well, if you double that, we could really change things up. Or why not make it unlimited? Some people had like the idea behind was it Bitcoin Unlimited, some others, where the block size could be whatever you want it to be. And there's various troubles, when you do that. It should be pointed out that the 1 megabyte block size is a completely arbitrary number set by Satoshi Nakamoto years ago. And it's very clear in the white paper that it could be anything. There wasn't, that was just an arbitrary number, picked. And obviously also Satoshi Nakamoto had a very different idea of when Bitcoin would reach some kind of critical mass or growth. Because when WikiLeaks, the aforementioned WikiLeaks in the show, started accepting Bitcoin for donations because PayPal shut down their account, or like MasterCard or whoever it was, had their donation account shut down. Bitcoin is something that couldn't be shut down. So they went with that. But Satoshi came right out and said, no, this is too early. Don't do this. We're not ready for this. And part of that argument could be said, well, because, that's why there was a 1 megabyte block size, because, he didn't expect that kind of usage even at that point. And that was back in 2012, 2013. That was years ago. So that's an arbitrary number. So it's not, kind of the argument that, well, you don't, no, this is like a holy number that we have to keep. It's some kind of level of security that we have to keep. No, that doesn't hold water. Okay. It's just that's not necessary. I have a completely different stance on all this than anything you're probably going to read anywhere else, but I'm not going to share that right now. I want to talk about the technicals, or, the specifics, I should say, not necessarily the technicals, but the specifics here of what's going on. Now, eventually this was getting to a breaking point, kind of like I described with what happened with private internet, with me trying to just pay for my VPN with Bitcoin. In May 21st in New York, there was, various Bitcoin miners. There was a whole group of people that came together that they created they came up with what they called the New York Agreement. Okay, and this New York Agreement was a compromise between differing groups, and the compromise was, okay, we're going to implement SegWit, segregated witness, okay, into Bitcoin. Now, segregated witness is effectively the idea that you could start to do transactions that would be recorded by the Bitcoin blockchain, but be done off the blockchain. Okay, that's part of the deal with segregated witness. There's an associated technology called Lightning, the Lightning Network, that would get baked in with that. And a lot of people don't necessarily like that, because, some people have the concern that funny business could be done, off of the chain and then get recorded onto the chain and could fuck everything with Bitcoin. That's why some people are very much against SegWit. Okay. That's just one of the reasons. There's many more. So So they came up with the New York agreement, which said that they would put in SegWit. And then also part of that, it's not just SegWit, but what they're calling it overall is SegWit 2X, meaning that they're going to implement SegWit. And then, the Bitcoin core team is going to implement SegWit into Bitcoin. And then they're going to, at some point after that, they will double the block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes. Okay? Which would be, admittedly for the concern of having more transactions and then moving faster, etc. Both of those things will allow for that. Are there concerns outside of it? With SegWit, maybe. With the increase of the block size, perhaps not so much. But anyway, some of that is getting into arguments that require a lot of talk of various technicals when it comes to it. So SegWit 2X is the idea, and on August 1st, as much as Bitcoin Cash came into creation, also what's called BIP 91, or the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal, which is sort of like the New York Agreement, was implemented and accepted by the majority of the miners for Bitcoin. Okay, so now SegWit is a part of Bitcoin, and in 3 months, coming in November 2017. What's supposed to happen is that there will be the 2X part of that SegWit 2X. You'll end up with where they will double it for, the block size, the transactions. They will double the ability of the transactions effectively. I mean, really, it ends up being kind of more than that, but it'll be 1 megabyte. They're gonna double it to the block sizes to 2 megabytes. Okay, that's what's supposed to happen in November. Some people feel that may be reneged upon. That will not happen. That you won't get that doubling in the block size. But right now with BIP 91, and there's other Bitcoin improvement proposals, I really hate those terms, and I think that's very annoying. It's so California. It's so Silicon Valley. Like, standard for Proposal 6 and all this different, or Proposition 6, or I don't know, whatever the fuck they call all that stuff. Like in California has a very unique political system, and all of this sounds like it, and it just like, it makes, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Not that bothers me, but, you get the colloquialism. So anyway, which would eventually lead to these other Bitcoin proposals, like there's BIP 141, which would be the complete implementation of SegWit 2X. Okay, so if you see these terms going around like BIP 141, it's not necessarily a technical term. It's just an agreement, a proposal for the direction that Bitcoin needs to go. Now, what was being done before SegWit finally got implemented, okay, and before Bitcoin Cash is going to be a thing, and some people thought Bitcoin Cash was just a threat, and that it wasn't actually going to come to fruition. It wasn't actually going to be developed, come August 1st. They thought it was just a threat to put a stop to or to thwart what's called BIP 148, okay, which is Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 148. Okay, that's all that means. And that was going to be, you might have seen this on Twitter quite a bit, where people were putting on their Twitter handles and maybe in other areas, UASF next to their name, which stood for User Activated Soft Fork. Okay, and the idea there was that if the Bitcoin core team, if the miners weren't going to agree to implement segregated witness into Bitcoin, that they were going to kind of bum rush the exchanges more or less with their coins, with user coins, to get ahead of the miner coins and fuck with the miners effectively. I mean, there's kind of a little more to it than that, but that's the basic gist, is that they would try and like force to, I mean, it's like the old, where the term sabotage comes from, right? Is, what was it, like Dutch miners throwing in, workers, I should say, throwing in their shoes, called sabot, into the machines to clog up the machine. So it wouldn't have exactly been sabotage in the traditional sense, but the idea is that they would have clogged and they would have forced kind of their position onto the miners. Users would have forced the miners to, hey, you're going to have to accept segregated witness, or we're just going to keep throwing in our sabot. Okay, that's sort of the idea. That might not be the best analogy, but you get it. That didn't need to happen. That was going to be BIP 148. That did not need to happen. Segregated witness got implemented, and assuming in November the block size limit will be increased to 2 megabytes from 1 megabyte. Okay, now like I said, a lot of people thought that Bitcoin Cash was really just a threat to kind of stop people from implementing BIP 148 that we just described. But turns out, no, they're going ahead anyway. On August 1st, they're already, there's blocks getting hashed, mined effectively, with the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, which again is separate from the Bitcoin blockchain now. And so that's a live currency. It's happening. Now, what's the difference between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin? Well, again, it stems from the same sort of issues that I just described. So Bitcoin Cash is an alternative proposition, effectively, to what BIP 91 and BIP 141 and BIP 148. Okay, it's an alternative idea, not to implement SegWit, because like we described, people have concerns about that. Okay, not to implement SegWit, but to solve the block size problem. That way more transactions can get through and maybe solve some other issues involved. So with Bitcoin Cash, again, this started on August 1st, okay, 2017. So it's increasing the block size limit, okay, to 8 megabytes. Now, like we said, Bitcoin is just going to increase it conservatively to 2 megabytes. They're just going all the way to 8 megabytes. If they went with what I think maybe one of the original ideas was with Bitcoin Cash, was to just have it be, it could float to whatever size that it needs to be at any given moment. The concern with that is that most people don't have the hard drive space. You would have to have a machine with the amount of hard drive space to, that could handle crazy potential growth. Because if there's no limit on the amount of data that can be transmitted across the blockchain, you have to have a crazy internet connection speed and you have to have a crazy amount of hard drive space, which the average person doesn't have. And so Bitcoin would have become kind of centralized, in that way. So it's pretty important that they only went up, say, to 8 megabytes, but even that could kind of be a concern. The other thing that they did is they have a unique system called a unique hashing system, which hashing is just proving what happens on the blockchain, okay? And it's called SIGHASH_forkID. And this is a new system that protects against replay attacks. Replay meaning, and this is important for them to have put into it, because what if people were trying to make transactions happen across both, the Bitcoin Cash blockchain and the Bitcoin standard, kind of blockchain, and just mess around with that. And replay attacks are a general issue overall to some degree with blockchain technology. So there's a security feature added in here to keep that sort of thing from happening. So that's another new feature that they put into it. It's a way to sign, transactions. And it also, that overall will help with hardware wallets and other various implementations having that. The other thing that Bitcoin Cash has implemented is that it has a kind of a more adaptable way for the proof of work system, mining system that Bitcoin operates on, to where it can adapt quicker based upon however many miners or however many active users there are using Bitcoin Cash. Okay, as compared to Bitcoin. Like, one of the problems with Bitcoin is that you could run into issues with effectively with how Bitcoin is hashing and securing the network, and whether or not transactions will keep going through if a lot of people kind of dropped off, because there's a very set algorithm that the proof of work mining process works on. Okay, so with Bitcoin Cash, it has a more adaptive proof of work system that will, depending on who drops and who comes on, it can shift quickly to where the transactions and the network itself can go on a little bit more. Now, all of those sound like, improvements, and, oh, hey, why can't that be in Bitcoin? Well, there's no reason really that some of it can't be in Bitcoin, other than perhaps varying security concerns or something else that people have. These are implementations that, in the future, if they're found useful, or, they're kind of experimental, to do this sort of thing. It really is sort of experimental, and that's a concern in and of itself, to be so experimental with something that holds such value. Okay, but yeah, these things could eventually be put into Bitcoin. So they're advantages, but they're not necessarily advantages that, oh, I can only get this on Bitcoin Cash. Not at all. You could get it on stock Bitcoin. So hopefully now you get what exactly the difference is between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin as you've always known it. Bitcoin now is going to do SegWit. It's going to go up to 2, or theoretically, it's going to go up to 2 megabytes as far as block size. Bitcoin Cash, on the other hand, has some new little features in proof of work, okay, that allows for it to be more adaptable, and it has some new security features that are helpful, okay, with stopping various attacks like replay attacks and wipeout attacks. And it is going to an 8 megabyte block size that will allow for a lot more transactions. Okay, but it's not putting in SegWit. Okay, that's kind of the difference. And really, the 8 megabyte block size, that's sort of an answer to what SegWit's really going to be able to allow regular Bitcoin, BTC, to do. Like SegWit is going to set a lot of what Bitcoin can do, a lot of the speed of Bitcoin. It's really going to set it free. Okay, and I've talked about SegWit, I think probably on Patreon episodes where I get into deeper technical dives sometimes. And I said, look, I don't really have a problem with SegWit. They can rock and roll with that. Like that's okay with me. I mean, the Lightning Network, I may have other concerns. Understand, SegWit doesn't require the Lightning Network. I mean, the Lightning Network requires SegWit, but it's not the other way around. SegWit can be used to do all kinds of wild shit, with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Cash is out there. It is now trading. There are very few wallets available for this. And this is why I think, to start talking about this, why on August 1st, so on August 2nd, I think that there were, where it was even tradable, and it was very, very few places. Keep that in mind. Where Bitcoin Cash or BCC, or, I mean, there's a bunch of different, some people are saying BCH because BCC already stands for something, but BCC on the Bitcoin Cash website, there will be a ton of links in the show notes for all this. Okay. BCC is what they're recommending using, or they recommend using XBC. I don't know. I've been using BCH, but people can hopefully you know what I mean when I say, I mean, Bcash, calling it Bcash, that's kind of been a good term to use too, because it reminds you of what? Zcash, right? So anyway, what places even had Bcash? How about I call it that? That even allowed to trade for Bcash were very few. The wallets that could even handle Bcash. Now, Trezor, the hardware wallet, said that they would be accepting and making Bcash work kind of out of the gate with it. And there's more to talk about with this on August 1st and everything. Okay. But they would have it working out of the gate. There was there's a version of Electrum called Electron Cash, not Electrum Cash, but Electron Cash. They changed the name probably because the Electrum development team was freaking out, saying, "Hey, you don't work for us. You're not part of our development team. Don't let people, don't think you can use our reputation of Electrum, which is a rock solid wallet. There's an Electrum for Litecoin. I mean, like a lot of people, Electrum's really, really solid stuff that people use. It's like when I get, if you install one of my favorite versions of Linux, that being Triskel, it automatically comes with an Electrum wallet. I mean, that's how trusted it is. And Triskel is run by the Free Software Foundation. So you know how important it is to them that something be rock solid. And so they said, no, you don't get to use the name. I'm guessing that's what happened, is they said you don't get to use the name Electrum. So they went with Electron Cash. And there's a link in the show notes to where you can find that. And they have it for pretty much every platform except for iOS. Even Android, you can get an APK for it. I have not tested out the Android wallet version of it. I have tested it out on Windows, and I've seen it in action on Mac OS, and it does work. It's a little clunky. Like, it's a little weird. And the reason that I say that it's a little weird, I'm going to get back to that in just one second. So, but the thing is that there's so few things that allowed you to even use Bitcoin Cash or Bcash that's why I think that it had any kind of crazy high value. If you remember back in October, I talked about this on this week's Patreon live Q&A. If you remember back in October 2016, which that's when Zcash came out, right? Zcash had when Zcash first, not Bcash, when Zcash first came out, had a crazy valuation. Part of that reason, in my opinion, is because few people were able to mine it. Few people were able to have wallets for it. There wasn't much infrastructure around it. So it was seen as very rare. And so it had this incredibly high value because people figured it had a bright future. And I still agree with that statement. I think Bcash was kind of I don't want to say victim, but was a product of the valuation of $700 per Bcash was a product of the same situation, where it was just so rare that people, put a high value on it, and people, thought, oh, this is going to end up being a big thing, and people are going to get involved. They're going to be investing in it, whatever else. As far as it being invested in, that doesn't seem to really be the case that's going on. It seems like what's happening is that people are, because the way that you get Bcash, or one of the easy ways to get Bcash, and this is interesting, this is worth exploring a bit, okay, and talking about. The way you do it is that you take your private keys, and this makes a great argument for why you should always have control of your wallet's private keys, okay. you take your private keys and you import it into a Bcash compatible wallet like Electron Cash or maybe Trezor or something like that. If you already had it on Trezor made it through their software to where this automatically happened. What happens is that your claim of importing your wallet would instantly give you claim to that many. Say you had 4 Bitcoins or 4 or 5 Bitcoins, okay, in your wallet. If you exported your private keys, you still have those 4 Bitcoins on the main Bitcoin blockchain. But then you could import that into Electron Cash, and then you would have 4 or 5, whatever the amount was. You'd have 4 Bitcoin, or you'd have 4 Bcash, 4 Bitcoin Cash, just out of the gate, okay? And there you go. Now what's happening is honestly a lot of people are taking that free money that came out that has a valuation of either $700, say on Tuesday or Wednesday, and now it's at $244, and then they're going and buying either more Bitcoin, which is probably part of the reason that Bitcoin is reaching an all-time high, because people are buying it like crazy because they just got a ton of free money. I know it's not technically free money, but it kind of is. Or they're buying into something else, buying into altcoins or whatever. People are selling off this Bitcoin Cash quite a bit. Okay, that's really what's happening here. So, but now to talk about how that's working, so that's what's going on right now. But here's the thing is that I think that this is this way of generating Bitcoin Cash and of giving people Bitcoin Cash is a very clever distribution system, and more to prove that, again, look, this is really an altcoin. Stop calling it a hard fork. Stop calling it anything like that. This is an altcoin that was created by people. Roger Ver's a big name involved, and some others, people that have a lot of reputation in the space. Okay, so that gives them some credibility, and it's just like when Dan Larimer comes up with some kind of new BS. If it's Steemit or if it's EOS or something like that, like people are like, oh, it's Dan Larimer, and so they all swoop over to it and they start investing in it and everything because, he has the reputation. And he has some skill at what he does. I'll admit to that. So just like, and you had some big names involved with Bitcoin Cash. Okay. And that's how it came to be. Now, one of the problems with any altcoin, because again, this is still just an altcoin. One of the problems with any altcoin is how exactly do you distribute this altcoin in a fair fashion? You think of something like back in the day with NXT, where people had concerns that, they generated it all. They did like a pre-mine or something, and then they gave it to 21 people, and then those 21 people were in charge of distributing it. And people are like, oh, that's not fair. That's crazy. Because they're not mining it out of the gate. Because if you have to mine it from, block 1, from a Genesis block or something, it's going to take a lot of time for your blockchain to have security and credibility and everything. So how do you do this sort of right out of the gate? And that's where I think that it was very clever to allow people to take whatever they have in Bitcoin, if they have their private keys, and just convert it without losing Bitcoin, but convert it into Bitcoin Cash. To say nothing of really the economic ramifications, future ramifications, and what it says about economics in our digital world. Because I think it throws out a lot of what people consider to be economic truths, whether you're from the Mises Institute or some other ridiculous organization. Regardless of all that, and that's a whole other conversation that at some point I really do need to have, and that I've been saying for years. But anyway, so this is very clever because that made what most people would see as a fair distribution, because it's stuff that you already did all the work for, be it buying it, mining, whatever, with regular Bitcoin. Now you just get that in Bitcoin Cash. So it was a brilliant way to skirt the usual concern that happens with with altcoins, where it's either an ICO or there's a pre-mine or some other horseshit like that. And everybody's already using it and they can get going and move on. Very, very clever. But that's all that really is a distribution scheme for an altcoin. That's all that is. Make sure that's very clear in your mind that's, it's clever, like I said, and I'm not inherently saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's what it is. Okay. So with all of this, there has been admittedly some degree of excitement about Bcash. Like some people seem to be getting on board with this. A lot of miners are not. The adoption rate on the miner side, which is really where it matters, because the miners are, powering a lot of your network in a very real way. Not to say the users aren't too, but, let's be clear that that's how this works. That's how Bitcoin has been shaping up over the years. The miners really have not total centralized control like the concerns I raised earlier, but they're important. Okay, I mean, they make the network go round and round in many real ways. The adoption rates, as I understand it, have been very low. In fact, it might even be lower than, if you remember, this was a couple of years ago, and I did an episode of Sovryn Tech about this, where I poo-pooed this whole idea, which was it called Bitcoin Next, that Mike Hearn was doing, who was one of the main developers for Bitcoin proper. And he was trying to do kind of a similar thing where, okay, we need to try and solve this now. And so he created, he sorted, it's very similar to what's going in some ways to what's going on with Bitcoin Cash. He made Bitcoin Next. And I think at the height, there were some 10% of Bitcoin miners that were switching over to Bitcoin Next, to that client. I don't even think the adoption rates are that high. I mean, it's only been a few days with Bitcoin Cash, but it doesn't seem to be there. What's interesting, though, is that, again, and it's understandable why, even though there's not high miner adoption rates, why this is still happening. One of the major, if you want anything to happen in Bitcoin, I'll tell you, one of the people you need to appease, and actually if you want this to happen with any coin, Litecoin or whatever, one of the people you need to appease, one of the companies you need to appease, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just saying it's a good idea to do if you're the runner of a coin or something like that, of a crypto, is Coinbase. You need to appease Coinbase. You want Coinbase on your side, and Coinbase was not on the side of Bitcoin Cash. And what's fascinating is that just a few days, I think it was just Friday, so what would that have been, the 3rd or the 4th of August, they did a complete 180, or it sounded like they did a complete 180, and Coinbase came out and said, even though originally they said they weren't going to support Bitcoin Cash, they said, oh, no, okay, yep, we're going to support Bitcoin Cash. And their official statement said that they would be supporting it by January 2018. Now, the statement also said that whatever Bitcoin you have right now, or at the time when they finally implement it, that there's not a whole lot of clarity on that, that will be, like I said, if you exported your private keys, it would turn into, you would be able to keep your original Bitcoin, and then it would just double into also being Bitcoin Cash, and you would have that same value in Bitcoin Cash. So they said that whatever you have in Coinbase will turn into Bitcoin Cash when they implement it. But here's all right. So why they did that is there were threats of lawsuits against Coinbase for not implementing Bitcoin Cash. And I understand why the lawsuits, were becoming a thing, because effectively every Bitcoin owner gets to double their value, or gets to double what their holdings. Maybe not the value necessarily, but you do get to double your holdings. Now, the date for when Coinbase said they would have it implemented by, it's kind of cover your ass as far as a date, because we're talking January 2018. That's what, 4 or 5 months away that they have time to do that. I think really what's happening there, I think that's them buying time to see if Bitcoin Cash is even going to stick around, if it's going to be a thing, or if it's going to fizzle out inside of a month like Bitcoin Next did. I think it was called Bitcoin Next, but you know what I'm talking about, the Mike Hearn project. I am not convinced that Coinbase has actually changed their mind. I'm really not. And in fact, if anything, just today on Saturday, on August 5th, right? Yes, it's the 5th. That all-time high for Bitcoin, should just bolster them to say, no, we're going to fucking stick with Bitcoin. There's whole other altcoins that I think it would make more sense for Coinbase to start taking on than it would make sense for them to start to start working with Bitcoin Cash, because that's going to be a little tricky to do that on the exchange side, because it's not just like exporting private keys necessarily. You're going to create a whole new infrastructure there that has to double whatever anybody's holdings are in Coinbase. I don't know that's going to end up becoming, really a reality here. Overall, I guess, what are my thoughts on this? Obviously it's proving that Bitcoin is just, the old saying, it's the honey badger of money. Fuck yeah, it is. It's just shrugging off this whole thing. It's shrugging off the user activated soft fork. It's shrugging off what's happening with Bitcoin Cash. it doesn't even have to pay attention to it. It doesn't matter. And I know people are like, well, yeah, but Bitcoin Cash, it's like the number 3 cryptocurrency right now. Nah. Give it a little more time. I don't know if that's going to end up being the reality here. But, there's the potential really in all of this. Let me describe a couple of scenarios that can happen here. There's one kind of conspiratorial scenario that that may happen that I described briefly on this week's a live Q&A that I did on Patreon. I'm not going to go over that here, but the two main things that could kind of, one potential that's going to happen, or one potential thing that's going to happen, we could really end up with, honestly, 3 Bitcoins, not just 2, even though I would argue we really still only have 1 Bitcoin, and its value proves the point. And the other thing is just Bcash is just an altcoin. In fact, I'm really falling in love with the term Bcash, because that takes the name Bitcoin out of it, because it doesn't deserve that name. I'm not insulting the programmers. They're obviously much better programmers than I, but just let's have some clarity as to what the fuck you actually have there. Like I said, it's an altcoin. But what you could end up really, because so you have SegWit that's been implemented into Bitcoin, the block size limit, and who knows other aspects. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there is going to be like a third Bitcoin, and I'm not the only person to say this, where there's somebody who sticks with the Bitcoin code, like maybe that you would call Bitcoin legacy, as compared to Bitcoin that has SegWit 2x in it, or Bitcoin Cash. And that's a very interesting scenario. In fact, it kind of reminds me of the Middle Ages. It reminds me of, you had the big, of course, this was thousands of years ago, or 1,000 years ago anyway. During the Middle Ages, you had the big split with the Catholic Church, where like Italy had their own pope, France had their own pope. The Catholic Church was literally split. I mean, you had what's called the Western Schism. All right. And nobody wanted to give, neither pope, the French or the Italian one, wanted to give up their power. And then what ended up happening is that the Catholic Church, the College of Cardinals and all that, they had to create a third pope position to kind of break this up and to actually put most of their weight and clout behind. Okay, because those two warring factions of the Catholic Church, just couldn't fucking agree on anything, and it was, it was crazy town. I mean, Catholicism's already crazy town enough, but this was particularly bad, and so, yeah, I kind of wonder if at some point here, if an argument kind of happens in that. And somebody, and there's this whole other third faction for Bitcoin that doesn't even want SegWit or any of this, but they also don't want to go to the direction that Bitcoin Cash is going in, and that you're going to have a battle kind of 3 Bitcoins. I mean, like that's still a potential thing. But really, I mean, I think the Bitcoin that has SegWit implemented, and if they do the 2 megabyte block size thing, really that's. If you're asking the stallion to say, which one do you crown as the real Bitcoin, that's the real Bitcoin. Is that how I want Bitcoin to be? Not necessarily. Again, I don't really have a problem with SegWit, but I guess I'll explain this because I teased it earlier. What is the trajectory that I want for Bitcoin? I've said this so many times, so long-time listeners, I apologize if you're hearing me, go over this again, but I want to go over it. I am an anti-growth cryptocurrency user, okay? Not to say I don't, whoever wants to use Bitcoin, by all fucking means, use it. But I don't think, and I mean, in a lot of this argument between, Bitcoin and SegWit and Bitcoin Cash, a lot of this argument is we're going to continually bring on more people, and we're going to do more with Bitcoin. We're going to add on features to Bitcoin. We're going to do more with Bitcoin. We want to get everybody on board with this. So we've got to be able to solve the amount of transactions and whatever else in the security that we can do with Bitcoin itself. Okay, I'm of the kind of an opposite opinion of the abstract notion of why this argument and these coins, are even going through the situation that we just spent a ton of time describing. I'm on the opposite end in that, like, I don't, kind of what we were talking about earlier with Signal. Look, grandma is never going to use Bitcoin. Like, grandma doesn't need Bitcoin. She can just use PayPal. She doesn't care. She doesn't care why Bitcoin came into existence in the first place. Not because of the changes that were, thought up during the New York Agreement, or that were thought up, or that were implemented into Bitcoin Cash or something. She doesn't understand why it needed to exist in the first place. And the reason it needed to exist is because humans, for the first time, could actually have, or not for the first time, but at least the first time in who knows how long, humans could actually have money and a degree of property that was not granted by any government, that was theirs, but still held value around the world. It's an anarchist dream, depending on your flavor of anarchism, of course. That's what Bitcoin, was supposed to be about. Look, the average person doesn't fucking care. They don't care about that. They think government's fine. They think all these other things are fine. They think, oh yeah, the greenback's backed by a nuke. Or, that's the only reason it has values, because the U.S. threatens to nuke anybody that would speak against them. All right, I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's crazy that people are okay with that, but they're okay with it. So, I mean, like, the average person just doesn't fucking need Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need to grow. It needs to be used by the people who understand why they want it, or who really do need it. Like, say, being able to get money to people in disaster scenarios, charitable work, people who are oppressed in various countries and everything. Those are the reasons that Bitcoin, in my opinion, needs to exist. I'm not knocking anybody that uses Bitcoin for other shit. Fine, whatever, do what you do. I'm just saying that there's a reason Bitcoin exists, and it doesn't have a whole lot to do with growth. And I don't think it ever can, because the average person just doesn't fucking care. And Bitcoin should never work like magic. That's a narrative I try to share as often as I can on Sovryn Tech. You don't want technology to work like magic. We even talked about it last week in episode 236 when we were talking about the chat app that can emulate your dead loved ones or something like that. You don't want the stuff to work like magic. If people are going to use something, you want them to have some modicum of understanding of how things work. And, the instant argument, whenever I bring this up, the instant argument is saying, like, well, look, people don't understand how electricity works, and, but they still use it and they take advantage of it. No. No, people have learned how electricity works. How many people that, don't have a death wish? How many people do you know that toss electrical devices into water on purpose? Nobody. Because they fucking know how electricity works. People can learn if they need to. And with electricity, lives are on the line, so they learn how to keep electricity from fucking killing them. They learn how to avoid it from killing them. People can learn. But they need to know why they need to learn. They have to, there's certain degrees of realizations that people go through. Okay? And I'm just saying that the average person just doesn't care. They don't want it. They don't need Bitcoin and all that. So I'm not interested in it growing. It doesn't, I don't need any drastic improvements to Bitcoin, because I think that the people that need Bitcoin are already using it and will continue to use it. But now there's this constant sales pitch to get people more on board with it. And I know it raises the value. And so that's why people have the incentive to do that. Yep, I get it. Okay. But that's kind of not what Bitcoin's about. At least for me, and I think at least originally, that's not necessarily what it was about. So my prediction with Bitcoin Cash, I guess that's what everybody's kind of waiting for. I'm not going to say this with, there's sometimes I like to predict, and I predict with pretty good certainty. This isn't something I'm predicting with like 100% certainty. I don't think it's going to last. There's no reason, there's kind of, I don't know how much money is being put into the dev team or anything. There's not a whole lot of reason for it to like really just completely die off, but I don't see it as it's going to be something that will supersede Bitcoin, the Bitcoin core, the main Bitcoin. I just don't see that happening. That's not to say that in the future something isn't going to overtake Bitcoin. I certainly think that that's going to happen, because there's aspects of Bitcoin that aren't even being talked about, like anonymity and some other things that aren't being talked about, say, at New York agreement style conversations that would allow it to really overtake it, certainly in value, if not so much in how many people, raw amount of people use it. Bitcoin Cash doesn't excite me. I don't care that it exists, but it's not something I'm going to be talking about all the time. I've messed with it. I've messed with Electron Cash. I get the deal. I've checked it out. But I don't know. It doesn't really do anything for me. And it kind of speaks to an overall thing, is that so much of this stuff, you really don't have much say. I know the user activated soft fork was being taken seemingly very seriously, but the average unless it's something like that serious, you don't have a whole lot of say in how this stuff goes. Most people just don't. And the winds of change on blockchains, are decided by miners and, cartels and cabals and all kinds of other stuff, and names that you probably don't even know. And situations that most people don't know about. Yeah. I don't know. If Bitcoin Cash implemented, like, say, zero knowledge proofs or something somehow, that would have been a much more interesting conversation. Then in fact, it'd be a very different conversation, because I'd be saying, oh, actually, this has features that matter. So yeah, this doesn't do anything for me. I mean, if you want to collect your Bitcoin Cash by exporting your private keys from your Bitcoin wallet that you have, if you're using the Copay wallet, which I've recommended, you can do it with that. Put it into Electron Cash, claim your Bitcoin Cash. Or if you just hold, because I know the BitPay wallet and Coinbase and others are saying that they're going to end up implementing it. Whether they actually do is another story. Or you just wait for that and you hold and you do some hodling and then it'll be there. Or you do that. But once you get your Bitcoin Cash, if you end up using it to buy Zcash, or if you end up using it to buy buy more Bitcoin or something like that, or Litecoin, well then hey, rock and roll. You got some free money there. and so you used it for that. But I'm not going to be surprised if we constantly see the value just continually go down. And it's just something, it's like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. It'll end up being sort of that situation. Which there's a conversation to have about that, but let's talk about some Ethereum in the next segment. We'll be right back with more. Woo, boy, it is interesting times when it comes to cryptocurrencies, no doubt about it. And I bet if you want to find out about a lot more of this stuff and maybe strategies of what to do about it, there is a conference coming up in just a couple of days. It's going to be August 8th to the 9th. It's online, so you don't even have to leave your couch. Okay, the 100X Investors Blockchain Investors Summit. This is going to be a wild time. Again, it's just in a couple of days. So if you're listening to this too late in the week, you're going to have missed it. But I hope you didn't miss it because I'm looking forward to it. Tim Draper is going to be speaking. You're getting a lot of big names here. Stephen Michaels is going to be speaking. You're going to have Tatiana Moroz playing, which how the fuck could you not want to see that? Use the code Sovryn20, Sovryn 20, when you get your ticket for this online summit, and you will get 20% off the ticket price. So use the code Sovryn20. Okay, Sovryn 20. But this is going to be a great time. I mean, there's going to be workshops, all kinds of stuff. Especially right now, I think it would be particularly interesting to see what gets talked about during a conference, even though it's one that's online. Especially a lot of these guys. I can't wait to hear what Tim Draper has to say. I mean, I'm sure people are going to ask him about Bitcoin Cash. And this is a guy who really knows what's going on. Some of his predictions, I think, have ended up becoming very real, like Bitcoin being in the thousands of dollars in 2017. He called that. So I think it's just fascinating. Anyway, you want to go to 100xinvestors.com. That's the number 100, the letter X, investors.com, and that will get you to the website. Again, use that code Sovryn20. You don't want to miss this conference, this online conference. You don't even have to, you don't have to hop on a plane or anything. I cannot thank them enough for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Check it out, 100xinvestors.com.
HackSec.
Woo, let's get back into the show, baby. And it's time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hackers and hacking and security. And I'll tell you, this is a security issue that we're about to get into. It's one that I'd been sitting on. This happened about a month ago, maybe. The story here particularly is from July 19th, 2017. So I guess maybe 3 weeks or so. But from Bleeping Computer, hacker uses Parity wallet vulnerability to steal $30 million worth of Ethereum. Now, Parity is a wallet. Now it's also like a browser. But this is a technology, a platform built on top of the Ethereum platform that is founded and designed, I guess, kind of chief CTO, or CTO of it. Chief is what the C stands for. Gavin Wood, who's one of the main guys behind, along with Vitalik, maybe even the number 2 guy behind Ethereum, certainly as far as developers go. So people, because it's Gavin Wood, because it's somebody with so much prestige, we're certainly like, oh, Parity? Hell yeah, I'm going to use that. And what Parity was offering, well, let me read a little bit of the story here. An unknown hacker has used, I'll run with that term. An unknown hacker has used a vulnerability in an Ethereum wallet client to steal over 150,000 Ether worth over $30 million. The hack was possible due to a flaw in the Parity Ethereum client. The vulnerability allowed the hacker to exfiltrate funds from multi-sig wallets created with Parity clients version 1.5 and later. Parity 1.5 was released on January 19th, 2017. Multi-sig wallets are Ethereum accounts over which multiple persons have control with their own keys. Multi-sig accounts allow owners to move funds only when a majority of owners sign a transaction with their key. So here's already like alarm bell number 1. This is happening with multi-sig wallets. Multi-sig wallets, particularly in Bitcoin, are seen as very much the gold standard of how to secure something. Okay, I've covered how to set up your own multi-sig wallet without another person needing to be there, but just doing it on multiple devices. I've done that on Patreon episodes in the very, very recent past, like just a couple episodes ago, maybe, as far as the weekly Q&As go. So this is a great thing to have, no doubt about that. Like, it's certainly a feature that you want in any altcoin very quickly. And well, if it's not secure, that's kind of a problem. Like that defeats the whole purpose of a multi-sig wallet if you can just get access to whatever's going on in it. Now, the attack by the unknown hacker that has now acquired some odd 30 million Ether, and also I think they've spent something, or they've cashed out like 90,000 of it. So this is, it's in play, it's in use. They were able to verify how this was done by white hat hackers, meaning, security professionals that said, okay, can we replicate this? And they did so, but they also did so, interestingly enough, and this is why I like to use often the phrase hackers are heroes. They did it, they replicated it so that they could get the remaining funds that the initial, the malicious, arguably the malicious hacker had used to get the 30 million, and they were securing the rest. They got it out there and they put it in, one big bad Ethereum wallet, and they'd make sure it get to whoever, it needed to go to. And that was a lot. There was a lot of money. I think it was something like 76 million outside of that. So anyway, Parity, as far as I know, has already fixed the situation. Really what went down here, okay, that happened. And this is just one of the larger numbers of situations where this has happened with Ethereum. Okay, what happened here is that because Ethereum is designed to be, Ethereum itself, which Parity is a part of, because Ethereum is designed to be this open platform that everybody builds decentralized applications on, right, dApps, because it is that, you really have the situation where you set your code to be, at certain points, to be open. I won't go into the exact string, what the string titles for this, but where you set it for open so that people have more access to it, and you can default whether or not, certain code is either exposed openly for access or whether it's closed. And that's very different from closed source or open source. And with the Ethereum language, or, scripting language, the Ethereum coding language, which is programming language, which is called Solidarity, that is generally set for open instead of closed. That's part of what allowed for this, as I understand it. Okay, again, I didn't go line by line looking at the code, to grasp exactly what went down here. But it's interesting for a lot of reasons, because, well, there have been some fair quotes, and in fact, one in particular from Charlie Lee, who is pretty much the founder of Litecoin. I've met Charlie, nice, really, really great guy. He said, this is from a tweet of his, if the creator of Solidity, Gavin Wood, cannot write a secure multi-sig wallet in Solidity, pretty much confirms Ethereum is a hacker paradise. And it's true. I mean, you talk about what happened with the DAO, okay, where, that was more than 30 million, if I remember correctly. Just crazy amounts of money. And there's other situations where, because all of this is so, there's wild, it's like Charlie Lee said, it's a hacker's fucking paradise. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that, being Turing complete is really being Turing vulnerable. And Charlie Lee's right. Look, when one of the main guys behind Ethereum, when he can't even write a secure fucking multi-sig wallet, what could you possibly expect from the rest of Ethereum? It's a hacker's paradise. Don't touch the stuff. Woo, I'll be back with more. Hey, but I'll tell you something you do want to get your hands on. Maybe some offline storage, offline cold storage. How about that? How about some precious metals? And you could buy it with Bitcoin. Woo! You want to jump on this? You go to rrbi.co, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, one of the best businesses in the world today. They will accept Bitcoin, especially with its high value right now. Decentralize your wealth by buying into some gold, silver, platinum, palladium, whatever, coins, any way you want it. Okay, you can work with them. Go to rrbi.co. They'll work with you. All right, and they're going to give you your hookup. You want to check it out. Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Use Bitcoin. And I thank them so much for being such a long-time sponsor of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Use that Bitcoin, baby. Let's get back to the show.
GameTalk.
Oh, it's time for Game Talk. Look, I know HackSec was kind of short, but it didn't need to be long. $30 million is gone. It was done on Ethereum. This has happened multiple times on Ethereum. One of the main fucking creators and coders for Ethereum, Gavin Wood, couldn't even get this straight. Yeah, you've got a problem. Okay, that whole technology, that whole blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain, has a huge problem. We didn't even get into, what is the split? In fact, this is a point that I don't think we have enough time to really, there hasn't been enough time passed to see what will be the ramifications of Ethereum splitting off into Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, which would help us really understand and maybe get a prediction of the future of what would happen with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, right? So, yeah, very, very interesting times. That's really the moral of the story here. Because there's a chance that all of this, what's going to happen? Because when the DAO happened, right? Vitalik, all hail King Vitalik. I say that with sarcasm. He rewrote history. That's why Ethereum Classic came into being. Is he going to do that again? I don't think he can. I don't think this is going to be allowed to continue to happen. But it just goes to show that I've been saying it for years that technology is, it's a problem. It is not secure at all. And it just gets continually proven over and over again. Parity wallet is just one of the latest. Usually just don't hear about the others because maybe the dollar amounts aren't as sexy, really to report on. So anyway, I want to give my bit of a review. I want to start having a little fun with this. I got a couple of reviews because we're going to talk about the movie Valerian. I can't wait to review that. But I want to talk about my new Nintendo 2DS XL, baby. Oh, is this thing nice? In fact, I'm in Studio 2, or what has now been labeled Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, and I have it in my hands. And I'll tell you, that's the first thing about this. So this is the latest and probably the last technological or hardware implementation of Nintendo's very popular 3DS line, which is best known for its 3D, obviously with the name 2DS. Kind of hints at it. This doesn't have 3D, but a lot of people haven't used the 3D feature. It's seen as an afterthought, and even new releases by Nintendo aren't implementing the 3D capabilities. It's not a selling point for the games that they have coming out, like Samus Returns and some others. So now the 3DS, the Nintendo 3DS, I have said for years, because understand the 3DS has been around since 2011, 2012. Now there's the new line, which has an improved processor, and there's a controller nub on the right-hand side and all that, all of which the 2DS has. I have said for years that the 3DS is really the greatest console out there right now. And the 2DS XL is probably the best implementation of it. First off is that it is part of the new line, and that's all they did was they just gave the name new to it, which allows for a couple things. One is it allows for, there's certain games that require you to have a new 3DS, or in this case 2DS. And also it allows for you to have the virtual console, which I don't think which if I recall, the original 3DS doesn't have. And that virtual console is priceless. Okay. There's just some beauties on there. I felt that, when I got this, okay, I was like, okay, what do we try out first? How do we go about this? I could talk about the games and everything on it, but the main thing here is that this has the latest processor and the fastest processor probably that the 3DS line is ever going to have. And that's helpful with a lot of games, because the first game that I acquired was Star Fox 64. Just had to be, because that is such an awesome game. It's such a beautiful game, and it played beautifully, and it felt amazing to be playing that on a handheld. But really, the 3DS is, the game library is just insane. So I'm only going to talk about a few. But anyway, the screens are the same size as any of the XL line from the Nintendo 3DS. So there's no loss there. Everything feels good. I'll tell you something that I solved, I think, what's a bit of a mystery that I haven't seen anybody else mention. And I read a shit ton of reviews about this device. Again, this just came out on July 28th. So, I had it pretty much launch day. But a lot of people are saying, wow, they just have these god-awful, ugly, color schemes on them. And I don't think so. So while I think there's two color schemes, there's like a white and orange, which I agree, that doesn't look the greatest. But then there's like a black and a teal. It's black and teal. That's the one that I have. Of course, it's black. And I realized one day, as I was pulling out of my pocket, I was pulling out my Nintendo 2DS XL. Okay. And then I was pulling out my wallet, which I have a Legend of Zelda wallet from Breath of the Wild, where it has, the whole Sheikah symbol on it and everything. And I was even wearing one of my Zelda scarves, which has the same color scheme and has the little Sheikah one eye symbol on it. And I noticed, I was like, wait a minute, my wallet's the same color as the 2DS. And that's it. That's why people think it's an ugly color. It's not an ugly color. The idea is that they're playing off of the fact of this entire like ancient technology that they created in the narrative, in the storyline for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where you have the Sheikah that were technologically advanced. So they just took kind of that mental narrative and they parlayed it onto the new 2DS XL. And so I think people just, I don't know why they didn't realize. I mean, I didn't realize it either until like I saw the two sitting next to each other. But if I had a Nintendo Switch, which I don't, and I was playing Breath of the Wild nonstop, which I'm not, I think I would have noticed it pretty readily. I would have been like, oh, that's the same color scheme. And it looks cool when you do that. And when you think about it, it's pretty cool because, Nintendo kind of created an entire mythological technology that they're taking advantage of really with this implementation or, with the color scheme on the 2DS XL. So that's really cool. But there's more to say on all of this. It's hardware that feels good. It has a good weight to it. In fact, that's one of the major differences that I can really feel between it and the 3DS XL, even the new 3DS XL, is that there's not so much stuff being jammed into like the 3D technology and whatever else being jammed into the top of the clamshell. Okay. Obviously, it having a clamshell design makes it better than the previous 2DS. I mean, that goes without saying. But so it doesn't have that. Also, but there's one little flaw that comes with that, and that is the speakers are now on the bottom of the device, and so the sound doesn't sound nearly as good as when the speakers were on the side of the each side of the screen that you were playing on, because then you had a really crisp sound. But whatever, you can put in, it has a headphone jack, unlike the new Google Pixel or unlike an iPhone. It has a headphone jack, so that's nice. So, that works. The micro SD card slot is now very accessible, which wasn't true for the original or for the new 3DS. You can easily just pop it out. It's sitting right next to the cartridge where you can put in a DS cartridge or a 3DS cartridge. And that's nice too. Remember, you get to play like every 2DS game, and there's plenty of them out there. It has a nice physical, volume switch. I mean, lots, there's physical switches abound on it, which I think is also very nice. So as far as software on it, admittedly, I still think that the 3DS's kind of navigation is a little clunky, and how much it relies upon touch. It doesn't rely on it 100%. You can get around with just the controller, but it's a little bit of a pain in the ass. It does have a slot right in the front, and it comes with a very small stylus, which I don't mind. I know some people complained about the size of the stylus. I don't know. I have huge, I have big hands, and it doesn't really bother me much. But then most of the games I play, I'm just using the D-pad and, A, B, X, and Y, and maybe the shoulder buttons. So, but it has a good feel, even in my mitts. But as far as games, so I'll tell you. So the first games I have. Kirby. I have a couple of Kirby games because I love Kirby, and those are wild, including Kirby Hyper Fighting, fantastic. As far as on Virtual Console, I got speaking of Hyper Fighting, Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting plays beautifully, looks great, very solid, and even it comes with a 4 gigabyte SD card, and you can upgrade that to a 32 gigabyte, and I think there's even like little hacks you can do to where you can put in a 128 gigabyte card, but I don't know. I have 7 or 8 games on there, and it's not taking up a whole ton of space, really. It does have the stereoscopic cameras, the 3D cameras and everything on it, but even you can't view it in 3D, so I don't know exactly why they kept the 3D cameras on there. I mean, I know part of it's for AR, and that's why there's NFC to interact with Amiibo and all that. So all the stuff that you generally want to do other than viewing things in 3D is really capable on this device. But anyway, the 4 gigabytes seems to be fine. I don't imagine storing a whole ton of pictures on there, but... So yeah, and again, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, plays absolutely beautifully. I did get Legend of Zelda Legend of Zelda, the Game Boy, the original Game Boy game that came out was Link's Awakening. Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, and they have the DX version in Virtual Console, which the DX version came out for the Game Boy Color, where they just colorized it, and they added a couple features here and there, but that plays beautifully. A lot of fun to be playing that. The real standout, so I did get a cartridge game just to try out the cartridge parts of it. I got Shinobi from 2012, which you can tell that game, they were still thinking about 3D at the time. Like they wanted 3D to be a thing because it has just a little bit of an odd perspective to it, but it works. And that's great ninja action. And I'm a huge fan of the Shinobi series, which they also have some of those games available in Virtual Console in the Nintendo eShop right on the device. But I tried that out, but I'll tell you, Blaster Master Zero, this is one of the things that made me want a 3DS, this time around, or in this case, the 2DS XL. And there's other reasons too. I'll talk about those in a minute. But Blaster Master Zero. Now, if you don't remember, Blaster Master was one of the original titles for the original NES way back in the 80s. It kind of plays like Metroid. It's Metroid, but with a vehicle. Okay, where you have like a vehicle that you can drive around in and that you can even like hop out at points depending upon the game. And Blaster Master Zero is kind of a remake of that. This is, in my opinion, it's worth the system alone. And you can get a 2DS XL for only $150. Like as to where even just this past holiday season in 2016, you were probably hashing out $200, $250, maybe even $300 for like maybe that Galaxy colored 3DS XL or something like that, or new 3DS XL. But for $150, that's not bad at all. So Blaster Master Zero sells for $10. I think it's also available on the Switch, on the Nintendo Switch. So if you have that, you can just get it there. But this is so worth it. This game, there's so much you can do with it. And kind of the graphics are quasi retro. They're sort of retro graphics, kind of Super Nintendo style graphics. It's really, really cool. You get to hop out of Sophia, which is the vehicle. You get to swim around. There's a lot of different weapon types that the vehicle and yourself can use. There's a lot of different play modes. Like there's a mode where it's a side scroller kind of platformer originally, but then there's certain parts where you walk in and then it's more of an over the top kind of third person. And the music is fantastic. This is, and it's an indie game. It's technically an indie game, even though Blaster Master, that name has a degree of cachette or whatever with it. Oh man, just a beautiful game. So worth it. That alone. But you have Samus Returns coming out as well in September, which is a remake of Metroid 2. Which we've talked about remakes of Metroid 2 in the past on Sovryn Tech that you might not be able to get anymore. Was it AMR 2 or something like that? And then there's now here's the other thing that really kind of sold me on the 2DS or on the 3DS was in 2018. And understand, Nintendo's making it very clear they're going to keep. This is a pretty premium product that they released for a system that's been around for an entire generation already, which is amazing in itself. But they said, 2018 is still going to be a banner year for the system, and I think it's true because we're going to get Dragon Quest 11. Can't wait for that. Sign me up. You have Etrian Odyssey 5 coming out, but one of the big ones that really sold me was they're coming out with, and I've mentioned this game in the past. In fact, it was a game of the week back when we used to do a segment called Game of the Week. And the game is Radiant Historia. It's an RPG. They're coming out with Radiant Historia Perfect Edition. I might have mentioned this recently during a Game Talk, but that's coming out for 3DS in 2018. That's another one where it's just totally worth the price of admission. It's totally worth having a 3DS or 2DS to be able to rock that game because it is so cool. So there's some very unique experiences to have on this. And I got to say, it feels good to be able to have like just a simple console that more or less does one trick. Yeah, there's a web browser on there and I've messed with it, but it's good for Twitter. That's about it. I've even tweeted from it and woohoo, because it does connect to the internet and, there's software updates and DLC and all that works fairly well, kind of similar to the Wii. But it's so nice to have such a purpose-built system that you just pick up. Even more so than a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, where it really only does one thing. It plays games, more or less. I know there's some videos on there, but more or less it just plays games. And you can take it anywhere, carry it anywhere, pop it out anywhere, and you're rocking a game inside of seconds, especially with the much significantly faster processor, even faster than the new 3DS XL that's in the 2DS XL. So awesome system. I give it, if there's a 5-star rating, I give it 5 stars. The instant game to get for this easily is Blaster Master Zero. Just phenomenal. I hope Blaster Master Zero comes out for PC at some point, but if it never does, Oh man, that game is absolute perfection. I mean, I put it right up there with Super Mario Bros. 3, SmackDown 2, TIE Fighter, all the classic greats. It deserves a place with them. It's that good. So yeah, 5 stars for the Nintendo 2DS XL. Absolutely. I'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. Hey, we've been talking a lot of cryptocurrency this episode. If you want to keep an eye on cryptocurrencies, here's what I want you to go to. You go to cryptocompare.com. Go to cryptocompare.com. They already have Bcash listed. Okay, they have Bcash, Zcash, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, Litecoin, whatever you want to keep your eye on. They've got your hookup, and they've got great recommendations as far as software and all these other things. And it's a great way to get social. Go to cryptocompare.com, and I cannot thank them enough for being a sponsor of Sovryn Tech. And right now, it is the way to keep track of these, like I said, very interesting times in the cryptocurrency space. So cryptocompare.com, check it out. Let's get back to the show.
The climax.
Ooh, it is time for the climax. And this episode needed to be kind of custom, so we didn't do the intros because I wouldn't have been able to play all of them because we haven't done all the segments in this episode. We didn't get to Tool of the Week, Album of the Week, or Tech History or any of that. But certainly I'll load all those in, next time around. Next week's episode might be kind of special too, but I won't spoil the surprise. But it's time for the climax where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to taltalk about. It doesn't have to be tech related. Certainly, sure as hell doesn't have to be cryptocurrencies or anything like that, because again, kind of like I said, cryptocurrencies used to feel like a real community effort, and now it just doesn't feel that way at all. And so you feel like you don't have control, so it's not as exciting to talk about, not like it used to be. But anyway, I'll still talk about it. And if people really ever wanted me to be at like some kind of crypto conference or something, yeah, I'll talk about it. You may not like what I have to say all the time, not because I'm against cryptocurrencies. I'm very much for them. But yeah, I would talk. But regardless, I'm not here to talk about that. I want to talk about a movie. In fact, a movie that I was requested to discuss, and people were excited for me to talk about. And I finally got the chance to see it. And I feel bad that it's been out for 2-3 weeks. I think like 2 weeks now. I feel bad that it took me this long to review it because I think it's tanking so hard in the box office that it's already leaving a lot of minor theaters around the country, around the U.S. or around the world. And that's a shame, because I really love this movie. The movie is Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. Now, people have been talking about this movie for a couple of years because little hints of visuals are coming out from it, and it is being, written, produced, directed, all that by Luc Besson, which Luc Besson is known best for, a few movies, but particularly The Fifth Element, which, let me tell you something. So, okay, well, there's The Fifth Element and Lucy. Those are a couple of the big movies that people remember him for, both of which I enjoy both of those movies. Yes, I did like Lucy. Luc Besson is known for, he has a very very artistic style, very unique cinematic presentation, which is on display in Valerian as much as it was in The Fifth Element or Lucy. I was alive, okay? I was a teenager when The Fifth Element came out, and I remember quite well that people panned the shit out of that movie. They hated that movie. Now everybody's kind of mimicking it. Now it's considered an absolute classic. Now everybody kind of loves it. At the time, that was not the case. I mean, people hated that movie back in the day. Critics were not favorable towards it. I don't know when the sea change happened as far as that goes. But now Luc Besson is recognized as kind of a cinematic genius, and I think that's a well-deserved title. And Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets honestly proves the point. I really think it's another feather in his very impressive cap. As far as that goes. Now, a lot of people also, kind of like The Fifth Element, don't seem to be understanding or digging this one so much. There are lots of complaints with Valerian, and I'll just call it Valerian from here on out. Here are some of the common complaints. The acting is stiff and the script is rough. Okay. The acting, I think the acting is kind of meant to be, to address that quickly. If you don't know the plot line is it's the future of humanity. It's like the 25th or 26th century. This is based off of a comic book. I will get back to that point in a minute. Okay. Where you find out about this race that, some tragedy happens on their planet, and then there's a tragedy happening on this space station which is the City of 1,000 Planets, which a lot of different species, including humans, live on. And there's some kind of situation happening there. And so Agent Valerian and his partner, Agent Laureline, are part of like this Earth or, human military force effectively. They are, assigned to figure out various aspects of these situations that are going on. So spoiler alerts, folks, I'm not going to intend to spoil things for you, but I might let something slip. So I just got to put that out there. Spoiler alerts, even though I don't think you could really guess. And this is definitely a movie where it's all about seeing it. It's all about experiencing it. Even if you knew the ending, you still have to see it to really appreciate this movie by a long shot. Because the story, for some people, they consider it to be kind of a trope, kind of blasé. But I want to explain, I want to address a lot of that. Okay, so first off, kind of the wooden acting. I didn't think the acting was wooden at all. In fact, if anything, I thought it was kind of cool. You had Dane DeHaan playing Valerian, and then you had Cara Delevingne. I don't know if I got her last name right, but I thought she was great. She looked great. She looked the part. I think some people were saying, oh, they look like teenagers. Well, let's be clear here. Valerian is a major. He in a major in the military. He's obviously not a teenager, nor is the character of Laureline. So, yeah, I mean, they might have just done that. Luc Besson might have done that for, I think it ties into the same reason that the acting was put on display the way it was. And that is we are dealing with, I think the acting was by design, and I don't know if anybody's ever going to interview Luc Besson to correct this, but the critics all said, "Oh, it was just so dry. Like the lines were, the dialogue was rough and all this." I think you were dealing with visually. This movie is stunning. Everybody agrees with that it is a beautiful film to look at. Okay, I think that to explain that the beautiful visuals that you are seeing. To the humans of that era, of the 25th or 26th century, whenever it takes place, this is normal. Like there's nothing odd going on there. And so honestly, I think Luc Besson purposely directed the actors to act like all of this is completely normal and to almost be deadpan. I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of the takeaway that I got, is they wanted to make it seem like the fantastical wasn't fantastic. It's fantastic to you, but it needs to be normal to the people experiencing it. You can't have your actors just going, oh, wow, did you see that? Because all this stuff is order of the day for them. Okay, so I don't agree with that. Now, the other two kind of major critiques are in the same vein, and that is that the story is kind of tried and true, kind of tired, I should say, not tried and true, but the story is tired. It's one that you've experienced in a million different science fiction movies, or that they felt like, and I shit you not, and this is going to be interesting why this is important, okay? Or you have people that were making the claim that it felt like Star Wars. In fact, they felt like it directly ripped from Star Wars. Here's the problem with that little argument, okay, and about the storyline being, maybe kind of tired. Okay, so this is based off of, like I said, a comic book. It's a comic book from France, a comic book series that's huge in France, major in France. Like, it is the Superman, it is the Star Wars, it is whatever of France. Like, it is the Star Trek of France. Okay, it is huge. It's the Coca-Cola of fucking France. Okay, you got to understand that this is a big deal. Just because in America, as usual, things are boring here. Just because you didn't hear about it here. Well, anyway, the lack of knowledge that the American critics had for this was readily apparent, because their claim that it felt like Star Wars. Well, guess what? Valerian came out the comic book came out in 1967, and it has been long argued for decades. Even when I was a kid, it has been said, and even when you buy copies of the Valerian, like graphic novels and everything, they will put it right in there, that Star Wars copied Valerian. And I think the argument is sound, because George Lucas copied a whole ton of different franchises. So it's not like he just copied Valerian, but a lot of it, like Valerian is a very Han Solo character. Valerian's ship even looks like the fucking Millennium Falcon. But it was made 10 years before Star Wars was a thing. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Most of these critics are fucking morons, because Valerian did it first. It's not their copying. It's not Luc Besson copied Star Wars. It's Star Wars copied everything that Valerian was. back with the comic books. And the storyline is somewhat fairly loosely based on a particular comic. I think it was the second series of the Valerian comic books, where it's not City of 1,000 Planets, but Empire of 1,000 Planets. It mixed in some other storylines in with it as well, kind of like Master and Commander did with all of those Patrick O'Brien books. But anyway, it works, and it is a visually stunning film, and that's Luc Besson, just coming in with everything he has, and it really shows. It is I think it's a well fleshed out, very expansive kind of franchise universe that you're seeing, and I think like the Pearls, which are one of the alien races, one of the major alien races, one of the major plot points, they're well developed. And they have a very unique language and style to them that I think is really cool. Maybe the one negative that I would give the movie is the music. Not that the music is bad. In fact, the soundtrack itself, overall, Alexander Desplat, he did the score for it. But this is a movie that also has a degree of pop songs in it. Of course, Rihanna's in it, so you kind of expected there'd be a pop song somewhere. Rihanna's some people said that she was in it way too short and that she didn't really deliver. I thought Rihanna was fantastic in this movie. Added a lot of fun and brought a little bit of gravitas because of who she is. She's an icon, into the film. So I thought that was a really nice touch to have her in it. But anyway, so there's a mixture of songs and score. Okay. Instrumentals and actual full on songs. I haven't heard a soundtrack and again, I'm not talking about how it is in the movie. Let me get into that in a second. Okay. I haven't heard a soundtrack this diverse and yet so well, it works so well together, has such great synergy. Everything kind of matches. Even the pop songs feel like they fit in completely with Alexander's score. And I haven't heard any kind of mixture like that. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've heard a really, because it's kind of a 50-50 mixture, as far as how much is actual song and how much is score. And I'll tell you, the end credits song, "A Million on My Soul" is the name of the song. That's probably the best breakout kind of hit of a song during an end credits scene since maybe, I don't know, Adrenaline from XXX or Satellite from Free Enterprise, the movie Free Enterprise, which has nothing to do with capitalism, has to do with science fiction. Yeah, I mean, that really hit. I've listened to that song over and over again the past week since I saw the movie. Lovely, hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I saw it, and she enjoyed it too. She enjoyed it quite a bit. I loved it. I really do want there to be a sequel. I'll say that right out of the gate. Or, well, we're already well past the gate, but I'll say that right now. But as far as the music, so the soundtrack itself is great. Well worth having, well worth listening to over and over again for the score and the songs. The score, particularly, not so much the pop songs. The pop songs work great wherever they are in the movie. But the score itself didn't, and maybe it was the theater I was in, but I don't think so. The score has some great crescendos, and there's some great action scenes that are happening, and the score doesn't, the volume of it doesn't seem to let it go to crescendo, to where it can hit a high of this really crazy action scene and be very heroic and everything. And I thought that was kind of weird. So the score's not bad. In fact, it's great. There's great themes in it, but you don't really hear it in the movie. The mastering just seems to be off. And it was really, really noticeable. I don't know. Maybe it was just the theater I was in. You can let me know. You can email me and tell me if you thought differently, or tell me in the Sovereign Tech Facebook group or something. But yeah, so that's about my only major negative with the film. Again, this is a movie that was totally going to be about style over substance. I knew that going in, and it's one of those movies where you got to appreciate it for what it is. Just like The Fifth Element was all about style over substance. I mean, really, if you think that whole love plot line in The Fifth Element was some kind of substance, give me a fucking break, okay? That movie was all style, and it's great. It's great style. Same here. And you kind of, I mean, there's some substance to be had, and there's some things to really enjoy and glean from it, but it's all about the style, and it's there, and it works. There's nothing too much that stands out as like an inconsistency. A lot of people complain about Lucy because it's based on such bullshit science. I don't care. I get it. It's Luc Besson. You know, it's a style film. I totally understand. I mean, people just got to start accepting that sometimes that's how movies get made. They get like Lost Highway by David Lynch or something. It gets made for the style. It's not supposed to have any kind of coherence. It's not supposed to have any kind of, I don't know, whatever you expect from Citizen Kane or something like that. It has a point, and it's a unique one. It has a purpose of why it exists and what it's trying to put on the screen. I think that there can be a lot of substance with this because the Valerian comics certainly have plenty of substance. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the, the megalithic, media juggernaut that they are, particularly in France and in Europe. So if there were sequels, which the money that it's making, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, but maybe, it could do well with foreign box office. If there were sequels, I think you could end up, like I said, with that substance, and I would love to see it. But the style alone is very, very much well worth it. A lot of it felt cool because it was such bleeding edge, cutting edge special effects and stylings. But you had ideas that were clearly from the 60s, like the K-Tron robots and some of this other stuff that was a nice mixture. And there was a lot of funny little jokes in there, like where Valerian says he doesn't speak French, and like that's lending to the fact that, no, the whole goddamn thing was originally in French, right? I think there's so much to love with this movie, and it's a pity. It's a pity that people aren't getting it. I don't know. Part of the problem here, I mean, Hollywood certainly is at fault for a lot of this, but I think also there's something to be said for the average moviegoer in that they, as much as Hollywood is kind of banking itself on the superhero formula and the franchise formula, which, Valerian actually is an original, or is an older franchise, but it's kind of an original idea to be put into theaters. I think that people are coming to expect the superhero formula as far as movies, like they just want their comic book movies. And I think that's killing, and they want their big franchises. And I think it's killing these unique ideas, because what it really reminded me of, and part of the reason I wanted to see the film, it reminded me of Jupiter Ascending, which that was a movie made by the Wachowskis, who have, just as much clout as certainly as Luc Besson does now. And the same thing happened, where I thought it was a great movie. In fact, Stephanie loved that movie. Like, I thought it was an awesome movie. I understood a lot of the little nuances and things that they were playing off in that the critics very clearly did not understand. In fact, they said so. But it tanked. But it was an original property. And I was like, oh, thank you, some original science fiction for once. So that's like why everybody went nuts about Arrival last year in 2016. It's like, finally an original fucking science fiction movie. And not to say that Arrival was even really that great. I mean, it was good, but anyway, I'd rather watch Valerian in a heartbeat over and over again, frankly. But it's the same deal where I think people are just like, no, don't give me that. Like we want a guaranteed, we're going to go see some superheroes kick some butt, or, we're going to see Star Wars, or we're going to see this. Not that I'm complaining about Star Wars, I never would. But yeah, I think people I think a lot of cinema goers are lazy, and Hollywood's lazy too, as far as this goes. And when somebody like Luc Besson does something genuinely very, in my opinion, very original, even though, it's based on older source content, the reaction from the critics, the monetary reaction and all that, it really just shows that we're kind of in dire straits as far as, films go. I think the movie is genius. I think there's so many magical things going on in it that maybe just most people don't pick up on. I don't know, but I thought it was very cool. Again, the music was great. I mean, a lot of credit's got to be given to be able to pull off, mixing a great score with great pop songs that you may have never even heard before. And, a lot of unique ideas, like some of the, like there's, for example, okay, this was really cool. There's like this gun that Valerian has and that other people use in it, where when he's running from like one platform to another and he needs to jump to the other platform, he shoots down and it creates this like this temporary platform that he can step on, little circle, and, kind of like stepping stones that he can run on, but then they disappear after the fact. later on in the film, someone uses the same gun, and they use it when they're trying to like find cover from an attack, and they fire it, instead of firing it down to create a platform, they fire it right in front of them. And a few feet in front of them, it creates like a shield so that they can run to the next, point of cover. And I was like, wow, that's a brilliant little idea. Lots of little things like that throughout the film where it's just, you don't expect it to be what it is. And it's so rare to be surprised in cinema today. And I think Valerian had so many surprises in it because it's the perfect tapestry to allow for that. So I thought it was a fantastic film, just phenomenal. Like not the best movie of the summer so far, certainly. But I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's not as good as War of the Planet of the Apes by no means, but, Luc Besson's work speaks for itself. And I certainly enjoy this as much as, almost as much as I enjoyed Fifth Element. It might not have been as funny as The Fifth Element, though I still laughed a couple times during this movie. I really like it. If you have the opportunity, like I said, unfortunately, I think it's already falling out of theaters. If you have the opportunity, do go see this. And if only for the reason that when you vote with your dollar, that you want more original stuff or new franchises and not rehashes of the old ones. And look, I want a lot of I don't want remakes, but I'm all for, continuations of older franchises. Believe me, I love that. Jurassic Park, whatever else. Star Wars, obviously, Star Trek, please give me more. But, kind of like John Wick. Like John Wick was a bet, right, with Keanu Reeves. Now it's considered one of the hottest properties, because it took a lot of risks. It had a very unique style. I see Valerian in that realm as well. And so, vote with your dollar. Let Hollywood know you want more original shit for once, and whether they have, Luc Besson already said that in his head, he was already, that he was physically writing down, and in his head, he already had ideas for like 3 or 4 sequels. I want those to come into being. So I totally recommend seeing this movie. Just understand, it's a style film. It's a style film more than anything. And one of the most important things to understand is if it feels like Star Wars, guess what? Star Wars copied it. It existed before Star Wars. I know it's hard to believe that things existed before Star Wars for some people, but it did. So keep that in mind when you see it. And again, it's a lot of fun. Just a lot of fucking fun. So that's it for this week. Woo! Boy, did we cover a lot. Anyway, if you want to become a patron, of course, go to sovryntech.com. Sign up for the Sovryn Tech newsletter. Got so many people signing up for that. They love it. Go to zog.email to do that. In fact, even when you go to zog.email, there's where you can read all the past newsletters. We're already 3 issues deep. And the 4th one will be out in about a week or so. So please sign up for that. Again, jump on board with Patreon. There's so much content that comes out every single week on Patreon. Sovryntech.com, zog.email. Get your hookup. Woo! I will see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.